We've got hush money. We've got slush funds for various foreign activity. You got crazy things being funded by USAID, which some of it can't even be repeated in polite company.
Right.
Yeah, and so Americans are going to, they're getting an earful of it and an eyeful of it, and there's got to be some recompense at some point.
Well, that's absolutely right. All right, so before I let you go, Leo, tell us about the latest articles you're writing over at leohohmann.com or leohohmann.substack.com, Leo.
Yeah, I just posted one this morning on the situation with Russia and Ukraine becoming more tenuous by the day, with threats going back and forth, missile attacks back and forth, and add on top of that now the breaking news that you announced earlier in your show, Brannon, about Ukraine now deciding under Zelensky that they want to sit down at the peace table and negotiate an end to the war. That now puts the ball in Russia's court. But I believe, Brannon, that Russia wants to finish the job and deliver some kind of knockout blow to Ukraine before they're willing to sit down at the table.
Wow. What are you hearing, Logan? What are you hearing in there? Canada caves to Donald Trump, and Ontario announces they've dropped their
$1 million,
20%. Look at this, by the way. Here we go.
That's a lot of money.
Look at this. Here's Donald Trump
about billions
at the White House getting a Tesla. There's Elon with little X.
Given to people with nothing. They have
That's
nothing
a live
they
footage
open up
right there.
A subchapter S corporation, and they put $2 billion into it from nowhere. And we've caught a lot of them. I wish we could catch all of them, but we've caught a lot of them. And he's been largely responsible. So we have to celebrate him. And it's not that he's conservative. I don't even know if he's conservative. I will tell you this. I've been doing this I've known him for a pretty long time. He endorsed me. I didn't know him that well when he endorsed me. But in the time I've known him, he has never asked me for a favor. He didn't ask me for this. I said, Elon, I don't like what's happening to you. And Tesla's a great company. I don't like what's happening. It's from our standpoint, American cars, American made. He employs thousands of people. He's got, at the same time, he has the most modern plants in the world. I said, I don't like what's happened to you. I'm going to do it. I didn't even know he was going to come. He's never asked me for anything. He endorsed me, and he never asked me. I didn't even know he was going to endorse me. The guy has never asked me. He's not saying, in fact, I could go a step further. I ended the electric mandate. Okay, I ended the electric mandate, and I figured, when's this guy calling to raise hell with me? And he never called. I mean, he never called me. If I were him, I would have called.
So on that,
because he's probably even better than I am.
Mr. President, is Elon Musk rubbing off on you? Is electric then the way to go?
It's not that this isn't for electric or gas, because people have their choices. Yeah. I'm just saying that I know people that have these cars. I know one man, we see him all the time. Yeah. He has 5 of them. Yeah. He thinks it's and he was a big guy for Ferrari.
All right, so Trump has a friend that's 5 of them. Trump's big thing is mandating them. He doesn't want to see it mandated. People can have the option, the choice, but interesting. Closing comment, Leo?
Yeah, I thought the most interesting comment there was, I don't even know if he's conservative.
And I stopped the ban on EV, so he should be calling me. I'm hurting his business. It's an interesting relationship. One of the reporters asked if Elon was rubbing off on him. This is very interesting to watch. Leo Hohmann, leohohmann.com, leohohmann.substack.com. Thank you, Leo. Leo Hohmann with Worldview Tube. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I appreciate you being here. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to some of the incredible people that we have, both at the local level, the Texas state level, and also, of course, our federal border patrol, who are doing so many good things to keep us safe. And I have some bad news and some good news. And the bad news is that because of what Joe Biden did at the southern border for 4 years, we had record increases in migrant crime, in fentanyl deaths, and in just floods and floods of people who shouldn't be in our country who came into the United States of America. We also have a number of ways in which the cartels became more advanced, better warfighters, because Joe Biden opened up the American southern border and allowed the cartels to turn it into their playground. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, as President Trump said last night at the State of the Union, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We didn't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president of the United States, and thank God that's exactly what we have. And I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said thank you, or said because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said we've seen a reduction in 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border. And every single day that we continue to keep this border safe, that means less migrant crime, that means less fentanyl coming into our communities, that means more safety and security for the people of the United States of America. And of course, we know the border problem, the border crisis under Biden's administration was a national crisis, but it acutely affected the communities right here. And I've already heard heartbreaking stories of people who are still picking up the pieces, local mayors who are still dealing with the budgetary consequences of what the Joe Biden administration allowed to happen at the American southern border. And that, too, is something that President Trump is going to help address, help fix, and help solve. Now,
headline: Trump administration implements real border security. Welcome back to Transition Tuesday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Well, we hear it all the time. Quote, we need a whole of government approach, unquote, to this or that. But if you want to see how that concept really works in action, just take a moment to observe the Trump administration's amazing work securing the borders, I said borders, and the interior from illegal aliens, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and countering terrorism from the drug cartels, transnational violent gangs, Islamists, and Chinese nationals.
You are muted,
the administration immediately started its mass deportation program on the first day in office. It's deployed the U.S. military combat power to the southern border. It's utilizing our exceptional intelligence capabilities to support the Mexican government and target the cartels, as exhibited by the recent arrests of 29 cartel leaders and their deportation over here. It's using President Trump's tariff programs to convince Mexico and Canada to enforce border security and reduce, if not stop, the flow of drugs like fentanyl. All of this has resulted in that dramatic decrease in illegal crossings that you heard, 30 from 1,500. And it's expected to stop the flow of deadly drugs like fentanyl into our country. My guest today is Victor Avila, a retired ICE HSI special agent, U.S. diplomat. He's an author. He has run for Congress. He's the chairman of a PAC that he founded. Victor dedicated his life to protecting the United States from illegals, drug smuggling, and especially human trafficking. He still carries a bullet in his leg from a deadly ambush by cartel hitmen to prove it. Victor continues to his service, and as I mentioned, he's run for Congress. And in addition, his continuing work to secure the American people through advocacy is extremely important. Victor, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir. It's good to see you again.
Colonel, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on. You know, there's a lot of information and ground to cover on border security and our interior security, man. And one of the big things that I think is going on this week is this discussion about the continuing resolution. And one of the reasons why the president needs to get this big reconciliation bill done is because he needs more funding for border security. Do you think we're going to be able to do that?
I think so. I think it's going to pass, and strictly and specifically because of that, it's really to fund the rest of ICE, the rest of DHS, with the monies that they requested. One of the things that I've been hearing a lot is the bed space. We're really concerned with bed space, but I'm getting calls from a lot of contractors that are ready. They have thousands of beds ready, and they're ready to negotiate with the government for these contracts. So it's just a matter of getting the funding through and then getting these contracts issued pretty quickly. So that's not going to be an issue. That's not going to be an excuse about the slowdown of arrests or anything like that. We're going to have the places built, some that are already built. They just need to be approved to then start filling them up with illegals.
Yeah, didn't we have a lot of detention facilities, even specifically for kids, designed that way intentionally, and those kind of things all across the southern border? What happened to all those?
I said it from the very beginning that I would love to turn those into detention facilities. I've been to a lot of them, from El Paso, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, Donna facility, all those, Laredo. There's a lot of them, and they're huge. And yes, let's use them, but instead of a processing in, let's use them as a processing out. Some of them, I understand it's a little bit more difficult to turn it into a detention facility because now you're talking safety. Now you're talking detention, meaning certain people are designated and categorized, and they're not just all put in the same place. So I hope they do. They're already built. We already paid for them. Might as well use them.
Yeah, exactly right. So during this show, we're going to use several clips from that long press conference that Vice President Vance had with Hegseth and Gabbard. But let's talk about some of the other organizations in this whole of government approach, Victor. What other capabilities are being pulled in to support both the Border Patrol and ICE and now the Defense Department and the DNI's capabilities? What are the smaller pieces of the government that we need to be aware of?
This is the best that I've ever seen in my career. We're talking about Department of Justice. We're talking about DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, a lot of three-letter agencies here calling Homeland Security Investigations, calling ICE, ERO, and saying, what do you need from me? And my colleagues and friends are calling me and saying, wait, I've never gotten a call. I certainly didn't ever get that call in my 20-year career, but this is a good thing. This is the collaboration that we need from all these agencies because this is the priority right now. And I know they're working out some kinks through there because some of these agents are not used to doing this. Second of all is the deputizing of the National Guard. We've always, that I'm familiar with. I work with the National Guard all the time, and they're great to work with. But now they've been given the authority to actually detect and detain people on the line. That's huge. The same goes for some military members. We got Marines down on the border. We've got in Texas over 300 Texas DPS troopers also deputized under federal immigration law. This is why you're seeing at least Texas for sure being fortified at the border, trickling areas in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Why? Because the governors there don't want to cooperate on the state level. But nevertheless, the federal government is heavily present.
Yeah, you go down there all the time. Have you been down there since Trump took office to see what the lay of the land is now and compare it to what it looked like in December at the end of the Biden administration?
I've been one time, and it is, well, there was nothing going on. It was pretty dead. And there were still those confused that thought that maybe they would have a chance to come in. But the difference now is that anyone that, you heard these terms, anyone that was encountered or apprehended the last 4 years, the difference is that they were then admitted into the U.S. And so that's why when the Biden administration apprehended 1 million, it didn't apprehend anybody. They let them in. The difference now is any apprehension is an automatic removal. on top of what is happening in the interior enforcement.
So when the Customs and Border Patrol folks or their deputized agencies roll up crossers, they're being immediately sent back now, huh?
It's a quick process. We're going to take your information. We're going to fingerprint you. We're going to identify you, first of all, to see if you're a danger. Here's another thing that's also changing. If you prosecutions, you never heard about that. I prosecuted a lot of people for immigration violations and this nonsense that coming into the country is not a criminal act. I don't understand what these Democrats are talking about. But that's another thing that you're going to see the increase. The prosecution of what we call entry without inspections, 1325s, 1326 re-entries. You're going to see them actually be prosecuted. These people are going to go to prison for 1, 2, 4 years. But what happens when you start doing that is that the phone call that the family members and everyone else that they get, because they're not going to believe you or me or President Trump, who they believe is that person that calls them and says, instead of the last 4 years, I made it to New Orleans, I made it to Denver. Now is I didn't make it anywhere. I'm calling you from a federal prison. That's what we need them to send back so they could stop coming.
Yeah, that's a great deterrent, isn't it?
That's the number one deterrent, is their own people telling them, don't come. Because before, they told them all the sacrifices that we got raped, we got extorted, all these huge things, horrible things happened to them. But guess what? I'm in North Carolina. I'm in Minneapolis. And that's all they heard. They didn't care about the dangers. And so now I'm in prison or I'm being deported right back. And I lost the $1,000 that not only that I paid the cartel, maybe even owe them.
Yeah, we heard what Vice President Vance said that Border Patrol folks are saying to him when they were down there last week. What are you hearing from your ICE colleagues and others that have been working this issue for their entire professional lives now that this activity is taking place?
Some of this might be elementary, and I apologize, but it is no more 8 to 5 here. They're out. I can't find them because they're out in the field. I used to be able to find them in the office. And again, that's a good thing. And I'm proud of that because I pride myself as being a working agent. And I say that all the time. And people say, what do you mean you were a working agent? Well, I worked. And unfortunately, not everybody does. But now President Trump has sent that order directly. And I'm getting those calls that, man, I got to work this weekend. Oh, I got to work at night. Well, that's what you actually signed up for, because the problem that the destruction that Biden did, it also created this complacency amongst the law enforcement agencies, all of them saying, well, I guess that's the way it is. Well, that's not the way it is. And so we're having to kind of remission everybody and kind of get them all up and going. And you're going to see that even get better throughout the next weeks.
Yeah, I think so. That's how you got wounded, right? When you were ambushed, as you were out working.
I was working.
So, yeah, we definitely appreciate your sacrifice and your friends' sacrifices and everything, because, I mean, this is the national defense of the country. And that's why I'm very pleased that President Trump has declared a lot of these cartels, I think the main ones, as foreign terrorist organizations. The gang out of Venezuela is now a foreign terrorist organization. And he's deployed the Department of Defense with some combat power down to the southern border. And we got to take a break, Victor. When we come back, we'll hear from Secretary Hegseth at that press conference a little bit about that. And I want to get your take on why we need that and what capability that's going to bring to the effort to help the guys and gals that are primary mission is to secure this border. And that's the Customs and Border Patrol and ICE. We'll be right back with Victor Avila on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Well, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for inviting us. It's great to be here with you, with the director, with our fellow friends in civilian clothes and in other shades of green. This is a demonstration of a true partnership on the southern border. As President Trump has made clear on the campaign trail and from day one and last night, border security is national security. And from the Defense Department, we've watched for a couple of decades other people's borders being secured while ours was open for an invasion of drugs and of violence and of chaos for American communities. That stops under President Trump. And the Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear, not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing, which is why it's been incredible to hear from our partners about what we've been able to allow them to do, facilitate them, and we've seen it in the numbers. 98% drop in crossings on the southern border. We're not yet at 100% operational control, but we are on our way because that is the mandate that the president has given us. So more resources are coming to this border. We are dedicated to securing it. That's the reason for our trip and our partnership. And I want to thank all the men and women who've been doing it recently in uniform, who have been doing it a long time right here, have dedicated their lives to securing the American people. And at the Defense Department, we are committed to continuing to being a big part of it. So, Mr. Vice President, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, man.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Transition Tuesday, and the Trump administration has transitioned at full throttle for border security using the entire United States government. And my guest today is retired ICE special agent, the author, and staunch advocate for border security to protect the American people, and interior security, too, to protect us from those that have escaped into the interior or be let in, Victor Avila. And Victor, on the Defense Department's take on this, look, the Defense Department or the Department of War, the U.S. Armed Forces, has been used on the southern border of the United States of America many, many times with combat power, and now we've deployed a Stryker brigade and its airborne aviation element with it down to the southern border. And you heard Pete Hegseth used the term, we haven't gotten operational control yet, but we will eventually get 100% operational control. That has specific meaning to guys like me. And I think it's an incredibly important step. I've advocated it for a long time. What capabilities will this bring to enhance what the Border Patrol and ICE are already doing from their perspective?
Enormous. This is huge. This is what the designation, what we're seeing is because of the designation of these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's why we had never seen this before, other than we had some military resources obviously before, but never to this scale and never to the capabilities. In other words, we're all in now. DOD and Department of Homeland Security, DHS, have literally merged here. Plus, the intelligence community. This is the best. This is where I applaud this, because it's the intel that we need. Without the intelligence, we cannot really act on the southern border or anywhere around that region. But what they've already done, they're flying over Mexican airspace overtly. meaning Mexico has given them the permission to do it, mostly on the Arizona, Sonora Desert, Mexico area. And we've got the drones that obviously that used to work covert at one point over Mexico. So all this planning and all this foundation setting that I'm seeing here is for something more to come. And you heard the Secretary of Defense, by the way, he's been to the border twice already, and once in El Paso with Tom Homan, and now this visit. And it's just telling me that you're going to see unprecedented action at the border, something that none of us, a lot of us, we all said, in my colleagues, we had never seen anything about what the Biden administration did because that had never happened. Well, I say that a lot of us are going to say we have never seen what's about to come and happen. And I think they need to have all of these agencies on board, National Guard, Coast Guard too. Let's not forget the waters, and Air and Marine, and a lot of these agencies come together, grab the intel, share that intel, and kind of reminder of this is one team. And then, of course, the big picture is kind of what is Mexico going to do? Because you have to follow very closely what Mexico is doing in order to what our response is. So something I'm saying, Colonel, a lot is, I don't know this part. I don't know. Have we been given a reason to do something? Absolutely. We have hundreds of thousands of people dying of fentanyl poisonings and crime by illegal aliens. That's not the point. But at the point that we are right now, is they're going to trigger a response from the cartels per se? Are they going to do something stupid to then say to the U.S. government, here we go, and that's going to be our green light? That's the part that I don't know. Is this going to be a response? I know the cartel is going to have some sort of response, and I've heard it on both sides. Yeah. Some people tell me, some of my colleagues think that they're not going to fight back. I don't believe that. These guys, although they might not have an allegiance to themselves, they have an allegiance to the power, the money, and they're not going to give it up easily. They're not just going to throw their hands up in the air. They're cowards by themselves, but and no match for our U.S. military. Nevertheless, you cannot underestimate the level of sophistication that they do have. They are capable of taking down one of our helicopters and killing some of our law enforcement community. So that's what I'm concerned about. Not so much at the border, but at the interior of our country. These cartel members are present here. What are they going to do? Are they going to retaliate by taking out or want to kill our law enforcement agent or officer or a civilian just because? Because I know, and a lot of you know, what they're capable of doing. They don't care. They have no regard for human life. And so that is my concern when it comes to the safety of all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a question from the live audience. Let's go ahead and take that. Rob is our host over there. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, Colonel. Thank you. We have Joseph.
Thank you very much. My question is very simple. Recently, the Congress passed a strange law about tunnels, saying that they want operational control of the tunnels. I mean, is this something that we want Congress to have? I thought we already had control of those tunnels. I'm just curious about all of it.
Did he say tunnels?
Tunnels, yeah.
Well, yes, and
yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's not confirmed, and this is I'm just getting a lot of calls that there's possibly other tunnels out there. And again, what happens when you put the patrolmen, the border patrol, back on the line? Guess what happens? They're going to start discovering everything that they missed the last 4 years because they haven't been there. So this is expected. All of a sudden, they're finding new tunnels. They're finding all of the activity that has been missed, not missed by them, but missed by the Biden administration, not allowing them to actually drive and actually patrol, and the infrastructure around the wall, where the wall is at, on both sides of the wall. People think that the other side of the wall is Mexico. The majority of where the wall is, both sides of the United States. And so we patrol both sides, and now we're gathering a lot of intel. We're back to doing what we're supposed to do, and Border Patrol is discovering tunnels. The latest one, obviously in El Paso, Texas. I have an understanding there might be more. So So right now, because of the presence of the border, they're not going to be using these tunnels. It's too risky for the cartels now, even if one that hasn't been discovered, to then be discovered. So the cartel is going to use tunnels. They're going back to vehicles. They're going back to backpackers. I'm getting calls from Hudspeth County saying that they're going back to the old places where I used to work, and they're trying to come back and smuggle everything in because they need to bring their fentanyl in. They still need to bring the bodies in. But now what you're seeing is a lot of smuggling ventures. And you're going to see stash houses increase on the U.S. side in El Paso, Laredo, McAllen, where they stash these drugs and these people as they distribute them throughout the U.S. It's harder, meaning the fee has gone up because of that, but it doesn't mean that they're going to stop. And that's what the secretary is talking about when he's saying about 100% control of the southern border, because those gaps still exist.
Yeah, exactly right. When we talk about the United States Armed Forces having operational control, that means of every piece of the border where there's a potential line of communication being a line of logistics or comms or human trafficking, footpaths, those kind of things. And so we want to quickly get operational control of the border, because there are ungoverned spaces and unwalled, unfenced. There might be a signpost every couple of miles in some cases along the southern border, right, Victor?
I've been to many places where it's just wide open, and I would be the first one to tell you I want a wall here. And so hopefully those places east of El Paso, east of Hudspeth County, Culberson County in Texas, I wish there was some kind of barrier, because we need it. I used to investigate vehicles loaded with drugs that would be driven over, because the Rio Grande has very little water in that area. And it would just drive their vehicles through, or the backpackers would come around and dump their drugs. So they're starting to go back to those type of tactics, because they know that they're trying to figure out now where Border Patrol is not going to be for that small amount of time to do it. And so it's just starting to funnel. And that's what we want. We want to funnel that traffic to where we can have the eyes and bodies on it. But it takes time to get there. One of the things is actually personnel. Border Patrol, before Biden took over, we're almost at 20,000 Border Patrol agents. They're down to 16,000, is my understanding. So the Border Patrol and the recruitment is really good right now. It's going up. But it's going to take time to put people there on these places to finally cover and have some kind of obstruction for the smugglers to get through.
Yeah, I think there might be some manpower available. The Internal Revenue Service, I'm hearing, is going to terminate a bunch of agents that were hired under the Biden administration. And I'm hearing that the Department of Veterans Affairs is going to terminate about 80,000 personnel that'll be looking for jobs too, because it's a bloated organization, again, designed by the Biden administration. And as a victim of that organization, sometimes I can fully support that. When I think about this military capability, and I want to touch on this in the next segment here, we got about a minute to go to the break. I think about the intelligence capabilities that I used to help command in the 55th Wing platforms called the Rivet Joint aircraft and those kind of things. And we've already seen some flying out over Baja California and looking into the interior and those kind of things. But we've also got a lot more capes that we can apply in addition to just our strategic assets. One of the challenges we faced in the war in Afghanistan was that mountainous region on the northeastern and eastern border. And they would actually put pack mule trains together to smuggle arms, ammunition, food, supplies, and people into the Taliban from Pakistan and those kind of areas. And in my old platform, the B-1 bomber, we had a ground-moving target indicator capability on the radar. So we could pick up trucks and those kind of things. But we could use, and there might be some B-1 bombers stationed right there in Texas, in Abilene, Texas. Little pop-up capability. Well, we got to take another break, Victor. When we come back, we'll hear from Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, and it's never been where the entire intelligence apparatus of the United States is focused on securing our borders. It is now. And we got some really good capabilities, so we'll talk about in the next segment. I'll be right back with Victor Avila.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your leadership in bringing the country's attention to what has been happening here at the border and the significant change that has already occurred under the short time that President Trump has been in office. Really, what you're seeing here today and what you'll continue to see is a unified effort across President Trump's national security team, the Department of Homeland Security, towards our mission, which is to ensure a safe, free, and prosperous society for Americans. As Director of National Intelligence, there are a number of areas where we are focused. The President talked about in his speech, over 21 million people have come across our borders illegally under Joe Biden's administration. There are many of them that we don't know who they are. They have not been vetted. We don't know where they are. I'll give you one quick example of one of the problems that we are getting after. From Central Asia, there were over 4,000 people who came across our borders using an ISIS-affiliated network. Our National Counterterrorism Center went through and identified those individuals. There were hundreds of them who were either known terrorists or associated with known terrorists. That information was provided to the Biden administration. You may remember in some of the news, a little over 100 of those people were arrested in 2024. Of those who were arrested, only 8 were either deported or remained in custody. Only 8. The rest of them were released back into our country. Where are they? What are they doing? What may they be plotting? This is just the beginning. There are many, many areas that we need to stay very focused on, working with Department of Homeland Security, working with the FBI to ensure that we're keeping the American people safe. Our Counterterrorism Center is working on making sure that we have that single source for vetting so that we can figure out who is actually in our country and identify those who pose a threat and get them removed. The president's designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations falls directly into this, especially as we're seeing some of the tactics that these cartels are using reflect some of the tactics that we've seen used by Islamist terrorists in countries that many of us have served in overseas. Our mission is very clear. Our objective is to keep the American people safe. I'm grateful to be a part of this team that President Trump has assembled to accomplish that mission. Thank you.
Great.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcasts and our Rumble show and YouTube and everywhere else, including Roku today. And my guest is ICE Special Agent retired Victor Avila, who's also an author. He's an advocate for border security and interior security and is continuing to try to encourage the building of capability in that fight so that we can win this effort and get ourselves interior-wise and on the borders as secure as absolutely possible. And Victor, we just heard, from DNI Tulsi Gabbard there. She kind of touched on a little bit of why us military folks that have fought the war in Afghanistan are very pleased with the actions of the Trump administration as regards to national security and internal security in the United States, because, these cartels are using the same tactics that we've seen from the Islamists, of which, as she said, there are probably thousands in this country. And there's a nexus growing between Chinese military-age males. We just rolled up Chinese intelligence operatives inside the United States Army as active duty people. And there have been hundreds of thousands come through that open border. So we have this nexus of the cartels, the Islamic terrorists, potential Chinese fifth column and saboteurs, and they are going to use the kind of tactics the U.S. military has been combating for years, decades, really, for a long time. But one of the questions that I've heard asked recently, Victor, and I wanted to give you a chance to address this, is I actually heard a press person, I hate to call them a press person because they're just propagandists at this point, say, why do you need the military down here? They're just drug cartels. They sell drugs. What capabilities have you seen that the cartel has that it requires a striker brigade to completely overpower them with our combat power?
Let's start with the drones dropping bombs, IEDs, car bombs, you name it. I do a presentation about comparing the cartels to terrorist organizations. As a matter of fact, my question is, should they be designated as FTOs? I've been talking about this for years. I'm updating that as we speak because I'm so glad that they finally are. But when you compare ISIS or the Sinaloa cartel or Cartel Jalisco New Generation, most of the time you can't even tell which is the terrorist without showing the name. As a matter of fact, the cartels in Mexico are more violent, have killed more Americans than any of the other terrorist organizations combined. And for some reason, I don't know why, I don't know if it's because they're in Mexico or because we call them cartels and we don't call them terrorists. But this is where the mentality and the messaging that I'm trying to put out is they're not just drug cartels. They used to be. They used to be DTOs, drug trafficking organizations. But the drug trafficking organizations evolved into what we have now is foreign terrorist organizations. Why? Because they're involved in way more than narcotics. Obviously, the humans, both in smuggling and trafficking and the exploitation of that person. They're extorting the lime farmers. They're extorting the avocado farmers. They're extorting the tractor trailers that come across that border that bring our goods at $350 a piece, every single driver. And I'm gonna tell you, Mexican nationals are sick and tired of being extorted just because they're having a successful business and they're trying to feed their families. But then they get a knock on the door from the cartel asking for their cut. Extortion, kidnapping, murder, dismemberments, violent. You heard about the 9 students that were just killed probably last week coming back from from spring break in Oaxaca. Dismembered, not just killed, but dismembered, and their hands and their feet found in different locations. This is what Mexico is experiencing. So yes, that's the difference, and that's what categorizes them as terrorists. The sophistication of the cartels, it cannot be underestimated. Why? Because this is why I love the intel community, the U.S. intel community getting heavily involved, because they've had their own intel community for a long time. And who is the cartel? Who are the cartel intel people? I'll tell you who they are. They're CPAs, they're lawyers, they're teachers, they're clerks at the courthouse in the U.S. And people sometimes say, oh, how can you make that such a claim? Well, I'm telling you, based on experience of people that I've arrested, they work at law firms, they have people everywhere giving them information, making them a cartel member, or at least an associate of a cartel member, giving them information because that's how they operate. When you have a strong hold on the intel, you could operate 2-3 steps ahead of law enforcement. So what I'm seeing right now is turning that around where the U.S. will have the 2 or 3 day or 2 or 3 steps ahead on the intelligence, because it's 2 intelligence here that we're gathering. Actually 3. You got the interior Mexico, you got the border intel, and then you have the interior of the United States. We're having to concentrate, and all of that obviously comes together. But there's different approaches to that intelligence. I know I don't have to tell you about it, but it's very different focuses, right? I know one of the focuses is identify 100 super labs in Mexico that are making the methamphetamine and the fentanyl. Or what's going to happen with those? Are we going to take those out? I don't know. I know is that at least we're gathering the intel. We need to know where they're at. They're somewhere in the jungles. They're somewhere in these remote areas, and some not. People think that everything is out remote. Sometimes it's just in plain sight, these laboratories. So we got to start somewhere, and the way you start is by methodically grabbing all the intel, putting the personnel in place, and then you're ready to move.
Yeah, and the intelligence world and the defense intelligence world coming together, we have a massive capability to take in the information, to analyze it, and then exploit it and get it disseminated back out to the users on the ground level, the folks that are operationally controlling that border in a timely manner. And heretofore, and I'm proud to say, it just was announced the Ukrainians have agreed to a 30-day ceasefire in their talks with Secretary Rubio and National Security Advisor Waltz over in Saudi Arabia, and that means we can probably even bring more capability home and get it focused on this, because we have aircraft we can put up all along the southern border and keep those platforms airborne 24/7 for extended periods of time that can not just collect on these guys with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. But the reconnaissance piece, and like I mentioned, ground moving target indicators, picking up that infrared to see human trains coming across. All of those things, we could do this, but the resources just haven't been available up until now. So I'm very excited about that. Do the cartels use law enforcement officers of some sort that have been co-opted or infiltrated too, in addition to the folks like CPAs and bankers that you talked about and clerks?
Unfortunately, they do. There was just another one that was just announced a couple of weeks ago, CBP officer working with the cartels, and he considered himself a cartel member. I mean, this is, I personally arrested 2 in my career, a corrupt Border Patrol agent and a female CBP inspector. It's a shame. I don't like to talk about it much, but it's a shame. But we have to, because it does exist. Why? Because billions of dollars are flowing on that border, and it touches our law enforcement as well, not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level as well. And of course, we know on the other side, it's all corrupt. Especially the municipal and state police on the borders are just unreliable. That's why our special forces are over there training their special forces, La Marina. And that's another step that we have failed to mention. They're in there already. I say training in air quotes, but nevertheless, showing them our capabilities of what we can do. Those are the most trusted individuals that even DHS used when I was in the country. So that's a good thing. But it's a good point. You cannot underestimate and not ignore the corruption on both sides of the border.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot to mention it too. You know, I've long been an advocate of using our special operations forces, getting them out of places like Afghanistan and Iraq and Europe, and getting them home to the southern border so that we can use that national security asset. And yes, we have men that are inside Mexico advising the Mexican special operations forces, the law enforcement forces, and other government agencies, and they do participate in these, because we're not going to demand that they stay unarmed and not be able to defend themselves or help out if they're out on an operation. So we should expect that. And this is not going to be pretty, is it, Victor? I mean, it's you mentioned the students on the side of the road dismembered in different locations. I mean, these people are probably more violent than the ISIS fighters that we've seen that line people up and cut their throats all at once in a video to make a point, aren't they?
Hands down, more violent. The Los Zetas who killed my partner are the ones that initiated this level of violence, medieval violence of beheadings, and there's so I don't even want to watch the videos. They send me these videos. I don't even want to watch them anymore. They're so grotesque. But sometimes you have to say it. I don't like showing. I'm not a gratuitous violence guy. I don't like showing them a lot. But I like telling people what they're capable of. They'll rip your heart out of your chest while you're still alive, and they'll show you your heart pounding on the palm of their hand. They'll cut off your head and display it or play soccer with it. This is a different level of violence that was introduced because of the terrorism and gaining the territory. And so guess what? The other cartels said, well, we got to do the same in order to compete against these guys. So the violence is really, really out of control. They just found a clandestine mass a place where they were really getting rid of bodies. And they had these huge ovens where they found about 400 pairs of shoes, and they disappeared people there by incinerating them, basically, in the state of Jalisco, which is the cartel Jalisco New Generations area. And so this is how sophisticated. They'll kill you, they'll torture you, and then they'll disappear. That's why there was almost 200,000 homicides in Mexico during the tenure of President AMLO, and about almost 1,000 people missing. And I'm not talking about a child or Amber Alert. I'm talking about adults missing, just wiped out of it because their cartels will dissolve them in acid or put them in an incinerator.
Yeah, and these cartels operations extend well into the interior of the United States. And in the last segment, we'll hear from J.D. Vance again about Tom Homan's deportation operation. And I want to dive into that with you. You're an expert in that area, too. And it's just as important as our forces with combat power and law enforcement forces looking outward as it is for us to be looking inward, maybe even more important, because a lot of people here in America are still asleep and not paying attention. We'll be right back with Victor Avila. It's Transition Tuesday, and we're talking border security the American way.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
It is impossible to do without the men and women on the ground who are actually doing the hard work. They just want to be empowered to do their jobs. President Trump has made that possible. So from the bottom of my heart and for a grateful nation, to every person I've met here today, thank you for working hard on the American people's business. It's been an honor to be with you. It's been an honor to see what you do, and we're going to keep on supporting you over the next 4 years. Congressman Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership. And now we'll take some questions from reporters. Sir.
So, as you guys have been exemplifying for today, that border crossings are down. A lot of attention has been turned to the interior, since obviously there's been a lot of illegal immigrants. What is, in your opinion, the biggest obstacle to actually carrying out President Trump's mass deportations? Even though, yes, like apprehensions and arrests and deportations have gone up in his first month, but a lot of people are expecting a bigger capacity for deportation. So what's
So let me say a few things about that. So first of all, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have seen pretty significant increases in deportations and apprehensions and arrests. But we have to remember that President Biden gutted the entire immigration enforcement regime of this country. We are trying to rebuild so that we actually empower people to enforce the immigration laws of the American people. It is common sense. It's what the American people want us to do. There are a couple of other things that we're working on. And I don't want to get ahead of any public announcements, but one of the ways that we want to make sure that we're enforcing our border is that we make it easier for people who are here illegally to go back home of their own accord. We don't want to have to go around and arrest every person, but we will enforce the American people's immigration laws. If you're here illegally, the message from our administration is you should go back home, and if you want to come to the United States, apply through the proper channels. That's an important thing that we're doing. And the final thing is this costs money. One of the most important parts of the president's reconciliation priorities is, of course, tax reform on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that we get proper resources so that we can pay for the flights, and we can pay for the detention centers, and we can pay for all the components necessary to ensure that we're re-migrating illegal immigrants back to their country of origin. I guarantee it is a part of the president's priorities. We'll keep on working on it. We've made a lot of progress, but we're going to keep on working on it over the remainder of the president's term. Yeah, go ahead.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking American border security using a whole-of-government approach, and we're talking about interior security and that mass deportation operation that the president campaigned on, promised, and was implemented immediately by immigration enforcement czar Tom Homan, and it continues today. And my guest today is Victor Avila, who is a ICE agent, retired, and an expert in this particular area of law enforcement. And Victor, one of the things that I'm hearing kind of at the rumit level, the rumble level, is, Tom Homan might run out of money and he needs more manpower desperately, and that's all probably true. And they're worried the numbers will start going down, and we won't be able to maintain and sustain this mass deportation operation at the levels that we need to in order to achieve ultimate success. What's your take on that?
Listen, manpower and money is always welcomed in the federal government, and why not now? Why more so now? This is what the people asked for. This is what they voted for. This is what they want. I think everyone, and this is where I don't know, it gets confusing with party lines, because I think everyone agrees with wanting to have public safety and having a safe neighborhood and national security and having a safe nation. So it is going to come down to obviously some funding, but what we have right now, they're doing pretty good, and they're moving a lot. Now, a lot of people don't think about, there's a lot of also movements of, you've seen movements of personnel. I personally believe there's probably holdovers of other administrations, maybe going back to Obama, that might not be on board with this. So that has to be cleared out. There's a lot of things that need to be ironed out, and the vice president is right. I mean, you can't undo 4 years of damage in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It's going to take time, but it is going to get better. And you're going to see this well-oiled machine that is going to be very well managed, just like they did, just like the Biden administration did it to bring them in. We're going to do it to bring them out and re-migrate them, like the vice president said. They're going to be going the opposite direction. Now, they did launch that app that really took place of CBP1 app to come into the country illegally, by the way. That was all illegal. Yeah. Well, guess what? We're going to do DHS has launched their own app saying, you better register here, go home, and if you do that, we're going to consider you to come back into this country legally. If you wait for ICE to come knock on your door, that you're going to be barred from ever coming into the United States. So all these different approaches, I think, will work. Mm-hmm. Another thing, there's a misconception here that first, obviously, they said, and they're very clear, that we're going after the worst of the worst first. Right. We're going after the criminals. We're going after the prior deports. We're going after the ones walking around with a deportation order. I get it. Yes. It doesn't mean that we're not going to arrest people that are just in the country illegally. And somehow I think the left started feel very comfortable with that. Like, well, if I'm just here illegal, I'm okay. No, you're not. That's why we have a large number of collaterals, because when they do go get the target, there's 4 or 5 more illegals around the target. You're going to go too. Secretary Mayorkas back then had ignored that as a violation at all. He said they weren't even going to consider it. Those restrictions no longer apply. The restrictions that we're not going to get you at a hospital, at a church, at a courthouse, or all that doesn't exist anymore. We're going to go after you. If you run into a school, we're going to go get you in the school. And I think that they're trying to give excuses as to, well, they arrested a person with no criminal history. Well, they're illegally in the country. That's the broken law. As a matter of fact, they're lucky they're not prosecuting them for being illegally in the country. We're not even prosecuting those. We're just saying we're just going to remove you. And so I think that message has to get out more, so you can see more self-deportations and you can see less activity on the streets. Also, Tom Holman has been wanting these jails to be opened up to ICE officers. They're jails and prisons. That's where these guys are at. Those are the ones that we want. And these sanctuary city policies are blocking ICE from going in, getting them in a secure facility. By the way, Denver last week released a Tren de Aragua gang member from Venezuela, which then I immediately responded. I said, Denver released a terrorist because they're now on the terrorist list. So we have sanctuary cities. Imagine if you knowingly released an ISIS terrorist member. Yeah. It wouldn't be accepted. So why is it accepted if you're the same terrorist, same group, but your name happens to be Tren de Aragua? Why? Because immigration is attached to it. I'm kind of fed up with it. If immigration is attached to any of these crimes, they seem to get an excuse or a pass from the left.
It's criminal no matter what. If you're breaking the immigration laws, it's criminal. If you are a mayor, I'm talking to you, Mr. Colorado out there, and you're aiding and abetting the release of a terrorist in our society, you are a terrorist and you should be arrested, and I want to see them arrested. Well, let's take one last question from the audience before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Rob.
Colonel, we have Don't Bend the Knee.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Colonel. So I just heard that the National Guard is now deputized, if I heard that correctly. My son-in-law spent 4 years in the Texas National Guard on the border as active duty, and the reason he didn't re-enlist is because Governor Abbott would not deputize him. So all they were doing was processing people, and he didn't feel like he was doing the country a service. But if they are deputized now, who did deputize them? That's my question. Thank you.
Good question.
That's a great question. So the authority comes straight from the president, but then if you want to break it down by agency, Homeland Security has the authority to deputize. Not every federal agency has the authority. In other words, FBI agent cannot, me as an HSI, which used to be U.S. Customs Service, had the authority to deputize. And so that it was, I know I saw about 300 of them in El Paso be deputized just the last week. I'm not sure where your son was stationed, but they are deputizing National Guard, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I talked to a lot of National Guardsmen, and the frustration, these young guys, 22, 23-year-olds, suited up and waiting there 12 hours to do nothing but allow people to come in. It's demoralizing. As a matter of fact, we had a large number of them take their lives because of it, or a combination of that, whatever was going on. I saw that a lot. And so now they get to be active. Now they get to go and detect and detain and then pass them off to the immigration officials. But that's an extra body that we actually need right now, especially on those gaps that we've been talking about. So, yeah, the authority comes from the president down to the agencies.
Did the governor's offices have to get involved at all, or did the president just nationalize the Guard so they could deputize?
It was the president. Now, because some are Texas National Guard, and I understand that the state guard versus the division there, the separate. But they let the president do that. What the state did is they deputized the DPS troopers, over 300 of them as well. So we have DPS troopers patrolling, and you get pulled over, and I've seen some videos already of people saying, why do I have to tell you? Because he's now an immigration officer, and he can ask for your alienage. That's what we call it. He could ask you what country you're a citizen of. And if he determines that maybe you're in the country illegally for several reasons, determining factors, then he could now detain you and take you back to the station and call Border Patrol or ICE and continue that process. That is a huge step that they couldn't do before.
Absolutely. It's just phenomenal what's happening. Nothing's going to be perfect. So we got to make sure that we stay on it and call your legislators, folks, and tell them they need to support that more funding for border security. And there's going to be a line item in the Defense Department's bill, too. So we need to make sure that's in there. Well, Victor, thank you so much for coming on today. Tell folks where they can find you and how they can support you in your current activities.
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Victor Avila TX. You could visit my website if you want to grab a copy of my book, Agent Under Fire. The website is agentunderfirebook.com. And I really want to thank you, Colonel. It was a wonderful discussion today.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. We pray for you, your colleagues, your families every single day. Well, tomorrow is what's
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Slingshot TV with me, your host, Troy Smith. It's just another day here at the office, but Slingshot News, we're growing every day. And the idea that you guys get to participate on the front lines of this war that we are in to create the truth, to create the truth by going and digging into investigations, digging into public officials, Republican or Democrat, and ultimately exposing the truth. It's a wild ride. I'm glad that you are here with a front row seat to witness what we're doing here on Slingshot News. I want to thank everybody for giving us your attention, giving us your likes, giving us your follows and all that. We're growing at such a great rate, and I can't thank you all enough for what is going on. So today, we have a massive story. You know, there's a gentleman that's going to be joining us on the show today that was railroaded because of his political beliefs. He was railroaded because he happens to be friends with somebody who I'm friends with as well, Roger Stone. It's actually how I met our guest. He's a former NYPD officer who has turned over his life to exposing the truth. And in the recent months, he has played, I'd say, the most crucial role in bringing forth the indictment of Eric Adams, which we're going to discuss today, is not the political witch hunt that most conservative influencers would have you believe. In fact, this is not a witch hunt at all. This is actually a rightful indictment because the corruption that we're going to discuss today that embroils Eric Adams is truly shocking. This is a man who has stolen from the people of New York. This is a man who has robbed his way into a position of power, who attempted to be the hip-hop mayor, and he's been caught red-handed. We should not, and I mean this emphatically, we should not give him a free pass because we think that he's being persecuted for some stance he never made on illegal immigration, which we're going to be talking about with our guest today. He was, fired by the NYPD because he spoke the truth, because he wasn't afraid to really just be friends with an individual named Roger Stone. Unbelievable set of circumstances. I want to welcome my good friend Sal Greco to Slingshot TV. Sal, it's an honor to have you on the show today. Welcome in, my friend.
It's an honor to be here, Troy. Thanks for the good, wonderful introduction.
Well, Sal, you are a man of many talents, so it's hard to do your introduction. You've done so much, but I want to start here at the very beginning. And I want you to talk about how you were persecuted by officials in the NYPD who are all friends of Eric Adams. Many people may forget Eric Adams comes from the NYPD, and he had a history of corruption at that organization that he carried over into the mayor's office. So let's talk about that, your experience with the corruption of Eric Adams and his allies at the NYPD.
Yeah, so I mean, Eric Adams was a NYPD captain. He made it 22 and a half years, I believe, in the NYPD. He was what we term in the New York State Police Department as a house mouse. Means he wasn't out in the street. He wasn't active. He was part of a couple of groups. He was a member and a vice president of the Transit Guardians, which is where his current sexual assault lawsuit that he's still litigating in court stems from, even though it was over 30 years ago, and he used the same law that they ensnared President Trump in this E. Jean Carroll thing that was completely bogus case that he had to deal with. But Eric Adams' case very much so was legit. There was a woman that he worked with in the transit district with him that was we call them a police aide. They're basically an administrative assistant, kind of like a civilian. And he went on a car ride with her. Whatever happened in that car, but that's what he's being sued for. But he was a member of the Transit Guardians, and he kind of moved into what became the 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement, which was another group that he was in charge of, which got basically his platform going as a police officer. Because remember, he was associating with people like Al Sharpton and Mike Tyson and Louis Farrakhan, people that all have records, or as the NYPD likes to put, likely or reasonably believed to have engaged in criminal activities. Remember, he was charged with this offense. He was brought up on this stuff by Internal Affairs, but it went away. In my instance, they said Roger Stone was the person that they said I reasonably or likely, they likely engaged in criminal activity, and therefore they came after me with the full force of the police department. They actually came forth with the power even of Congress against me, only to find out that the only crime I committed was that I am friends with someone that apparently the police department and Eric Adams in particular doesn't like. So I stand here still in a pending lawsuit against the police department, still exposing Eric Adams and all his cronies in the NYPD and his administration, where hopefully at some point, I don't know if this guy, he should be held accountable in a court of law We just don't know if he ever will be held accountable in a court of law.
Well, Sal, and that's what we want to get to today, because there has been an effort by members of, I would say, the conservative influencer group and also, members of the Republican Party who are eager to give Mayor Eric Adams a pass for his corruption that was exposed within this indictment. This indictment, to me, is one of the most damning indictments we've seen of a major political official in my lifetime. It talks about, we're going to get into this today, in detail, the straw donor scheme. And maybe that's a good place to start. We pulled, if we could go to number 7 for our producer there to check out the articles we pulled. Eric Adams has pled guilty. Several contributors to his campaigns have pled guilty to a straw donor scheme that includes foreign countries. And Sal, you've been on top of this since the very beginning. Can you break this down for our audience? What does that mean, straw donor scheme, and why is this such an important part of this indictment that's rarely talked about?
He is surrounded by the shadiest people that you can imagine. So in this indictment, what it said is that there was an exchange of favor. So basically, he's involved with these Turkish businessmen. They're all foreign, some of them real estate moguls. That's really the power structure behind all of this, what's going on lately. So these Turkish business owners, real estate, construction companies, what they do is it's an 8-to-1 matching funds program. For every $250, you get 8-to-1 matching funds. So what they need to do is, obviously, the owner of a company can only give one time. Max contribution, I believe, is $2,000. After that, you're not allowed to give anymore. But if you could somehow coax your employees or people to give money, or you're giving money underneath their name, even though they may or may not even know about this, well, then you can get matching funds for an assortment of money. And of course, it's 8-to-1 only for New York City residents. So you have to be a resident of New York City in order to contribute the money and then be eligible for the 8-to-1 matching fund. So Eric Adams was doing this. He's one of the masters of this. He's not the only one. We've come to learn, I believe, that Carl Hastie, who is the speaker, the assembly speaker in New York State, he's done this in the past. Letitia James, there's been allegations of her doing this. It's not a thing that doesn't happen. It's just who does it at an egregious level and who could get caught. So he was doing this, the total amount of everything. And there's more to this than just an upgrade on a Turkish airline. That is a low information hook line that came from, I don't know what influencer or who's attached to who, but it's false. It's a lot more serious because the total amount was $10 million, including getting a permit speed track for a Turkish embassy, which got him about $200,000 in money, or $100,000 in money from the people that run that, which was expedited through his lead advisor, head advisor at that time, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, who right now herself is facing charges in, of all people, Alvin Bragg's courtroom in the state. And that is how this scheme really came about. It's $10 million that he took of taxpayer money from these matching fund programs and used it, illegally, because he got audited by the New York City campaign committee, the board, and they want the $10 million back. So clearly he has problems today in his current campaign that he was running, where they have the same thing. Donors that don't match. They're saying that there's money that doesn't go to anywhere. There's like $3 million in unknown money. I don't even know how you could do that in New York City. So he is involved. Troy's been doing this for a long time. He's been doing it since it's all the way back. His indictment, which also I can get to, is they keep saying that in 2023 he came and said, this migrant crisis is going to destroy us, which is a joke because the migrant shelters, he's just upset he wasn't getting money. So him and his pal, Tim Pearson, who said, where's my crumbs, couldn't split the kickbacks. So Eric Adams, the indictment did not start at that point in 2023. This is another low information hook line. We already know through the former head of the Southern District of New York, Danielle Sassone, who, when she resigned, wrote this whole memo back to Pam Bondi about this. The entire thing started in 2017 under President Trump's original Justice Department. There was nothing political about Eric Adams' indictment. He was being investigated by the Public Corruption Unit. They take a long time to look in everything because they want to dot their I's and cross their T's. This isn't like, oh, this guy, I think he attacked somebody, so let's investigate him and arrest him tomorrow. No, this takes a long time. And that's what was the culmination of a few years worth of work. But unfortunately, Troy, if they do dismiss this, just know he's also involved in other things that are going right now, ongoing within the police department and the city and other investigations. So all they were trying to do is bring this indictment, and it's one of many other cases that are following it. So it's basically a criminal enterprise, Troy, from 2017 up until even today. Even today, it's ongoing. So if you cut this off, how do you explain all these people that pled guilty and witnesses, or what? Where does that leave them? You had this whole case, and now there's this entire fiasco that entails it afterwards. This is a mess, Troy.
Well, and, there's a lot that I want to get to in what your response is, because it's really important what you're discussing here, Sal. Eric Adams is really hinging, I believe, on this immigration idea that he's now always standing against Biden, which is a total farce. We've pulled the clips that we can actually play. Recently, he said that he can't control the migrant crisis during a testimony in Congress, and we won't play that clip because it's actually like 3 minutes long. But we have a clip, the one just below it, where he actually, this is 2 years ago, Sal. So this is just 2 years ago. He was claiming that it was his duty as mayor to help asylum seekers. And I think a lot of people forget when we talk about the high-priced hotels in New York City where migrants are being stored and they're throwing out veterans. Eric Adams has a lot to do with that. So let's roll this clip and then get your reaction. This guy has been at the forefront of pushing migration, pushing this illegal immigration that's overwhelmed the city of New York. And now he's like the boy who's crying wolf, saying it's not his fault. It is 100% his fault. Let's roll it.
Mayor Adams spoke out again today about the ongoing border battle as thousands of migrants arrive here from Texas. He says New York has a humanitarian and legal responsibility to find shelter for asylum seekers. This as another bus came into the Port Authority this morning.
There's a way we should coordinate that on the federal, state, and city levels. That was not done at all. And that not only overburdens the system here in New York, but it also is unfair to those who were shoved out of Texas.
I'm working with my colleagues across city government to make sure that we provide the assistance that asylum seekers need in our city, and that we're proud of what we're doing for these families.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott started what he calls Operation Lone Star in April. He says it's necessary to relieve the burden on border cities.
Sal, your reaction?
See, this is people now like revisionist history, because all of a sudden it seems like some of these conservative influencers are, I don't know, being told to parrot these low information talking points. See, he actually campaigned, Troy, on the fact that he said New York City will remain a sanctuary city. He was calling President Trump and his family white supremacists on X. You could go back and look at it. He also did not veto a bill that should have been vetoed by him that was passed that said that illegals should vote in New York City local elections. This guy is the Papi Chulo of illegal immigration, if you ask me. And Joe Biden, who was making these, just the border was wide open. Eric Adams, then at a press conference in October of 2023, said that New York City's official position is that the borders are to remain open. It wasn't until about a few weeks after that he said this infamous one hook line out of this. And by the way, they should be watching all those town halls he was at and see some of the crazy stuff he said in those town halls. But they fixate on this one line that he said, this will destroy our city if this continues. And they use this as if this is the coming to God and Jesus moment for him, when clearly he wanted more money from the government to fund his migrant shelter scheme that his cronies, who are being investigated for, Tim Pearson in particular, were involved in. Because in a lawsuit that Tim Pearson's involved in, he's a deputy mayor underneath Eric Adams, no longer, but he referenced this to somebody else, and it's on the lawsuit. In regards to the migrant shelters, he said, "Where's my crumbs?" So clearly, there's some kickback going on, and there's people that have now been gobbled up in alley investigations, some that were indicted. They're from the Chinese community. They're Asians, or they're from China, and he has an Asian connection, and Winnie Greco. And all of this goes back to hotels that were being used for not only migrants, but prior with COVID. So this guy is mired in anything but, like, it's just criminality. There's nothing like positive coming out of Eric Adams, at least in my humble opinion. But there's facts to it. And I mean, you could go back and look. There's numerous videos, articles that'll state all this. But of course, now everyone's having revisionist history and saying he was a victim of political persecution, when just the other day he testified to Congress that this cost the city $6.9 billion. Yet all the other city mayors that were sitting next to him, they had criminal referrals for him, but not him, which is really bizarre. They combined don't even total, I believe, $1 billion total would cost. But Eric Adams, New York City, $6.9 billion. How do you see that? I mean, how do you not see that there's something wrong there? $6.9 billion for New York City alone, and the other cities combined don't even have $1 billion? Come on.
Well, and Sal, I think it's important to point out, because, it's something that was really troubling to me reviewing this information and just talking to you, because you've been so vocal about this. Eric Adams has attempted to be a hip hop mayor. So he's making these large sums of cash, and he's using that to party with people, many of whom have been indicted since he partied with them. We have a clip of him giving Diddy, yes, the Diddy, the key to the city. Diddy and Eric Adams had a very storied relationship, and it's even rumored that Eric Adams appeared at many of the infamous Diddy parties where sexual acts were going on and there were crimes being committed. So let's roll that clip and then talk to you about this hip-hop aspect of Eric Adams. A lot of people don't understand. This guy was high-rolling on people's money. Let's roll it.
He already has the keys to some pretty exclusive places, and now Sean Diddy Combs can add New York City to that list. It's Diddy Day in the city. Videos have been playing on the Jumbotron for TSX Broadway, and the crowd waited. Then around 11:30, the doors opened for the mayor and the artist.
The bad boy of entertainment is getting the key to the city from the bad boy of politics.
I want to thank y'all for this honor and just recognizing me being from New York, giving me the key to the city. Diddy finally has the key to the city.
Today's event coincides with the release of his new album, The Love Album, Off the Grid.
Unbelievable, Sal. What can you tell us about that?
From New York, that not only prosecuted Eric Adams, there's a lot people want to make of this Jeffrey Epstein case, but they also have the P. Diddy case. And for everyone who's looking for accountability in regards to the Jeffrey Epstein case, the man's been gone for quite a while. Ghislaine Maxwell, who was his, his accomplice, his cohort, his companion, she was found guilty, and she's actually fighting her case right now, the appeals part of it. So that part is still a quasi-active but not active case. And I really think that in his case, all you're going to have is maybe some DVDs and videos that may or may not show something. I don't think there really are any more files than what you're seeing. I think it's the videos, and if they still exist, that would be prominent on what people should see. But we don't know if you can, because they're playing games, or is it being still used in the active case with Ghislaine Maxwell? But those are questions to ask the Southern District of New York. But the more important case is P. Diddy. And not enough people are asking questions about this guy. He's being charged as if there's a co-conspirator or, some kind of racketeering case, but where are the other co-conspirators? So I want to put attention on this. To be charged in a RICO case, you need co-conspirators. Puff Daddy, I'm not saying, I don't know. They said he's doing a lot of different things. He's hanging around a lot of shady people. He's involved with a lot of these people that Eric Adams was involved in. But the actual crimes of what he's doing, although they are crimes, they're crimes against people, maybe even people that were underage. But they're supposed to be co-conspirators, and we don't see any. And you start to wonder if the case has any political ramifications, meaning there's co-conspirators that could be a Democrat donor or a politician, because it just says a RICO case, but there's no co-conspirators when there should be. They're just saying it's P. Diddy. So the case, although it's probably very strong on all these other parts, we also want to know why there aren't any other co-conspirators. That's a good question to ask. But his relationship with Eric Adams, I could tell you, there's a music video from 1994 that was, I guess, Notorious B.I.G., who was Puff Daddy, I guess he was his producer. And in that video, which had Pete Diddy, I guess, singing in the background or on the song, on a flagpole, you could see a picture of Eric Adams on it. So how far back do they actually know each other? You'd probably have to say, well, that's odd that they have a picture of Eric Adams on a pole, which made no sense if you watch the video. So I am understanding that they know each other for quite a while. So what went on? Obviously, no one's ever asked Eric Adams about it. I know he recently said he feels sorry for him, but they got to press him and ask him more if you want to know anything. But the actual case leaves a lot more questions than answers, because there has to be other co-conspirators, and people should be focusing on the P. Diddy cases more than a case of somebody who has been dead now for quite a while.
Well, and Sal, you are former law enforcement, so I wanted to ask you, you're talking about these co-conspirators. Does that include, so just for instance, if somebody, say like Eric Adams, did attend Diddy parties and they have evidence that he committed crimes, he would then be a co-conspirator, no?
Correct. Anyone who's involved in this, whatever crimes that P. Diddy was involved in, whether they be a very high rank, let's say there is a politician, let's say there is a police officer, these people would be a co-conspirator, depending on whatever the crime that they're saying was alleged to have happened. Could be a cover-up. It could be money exchange. It could be same thing you would treat a RICO case involving alleged mobsters, right? Same thing would apply here. But you only see P. Diddy's name when it's missing, that they should be co-conspirators, because that's one of the charges is RICO, it's racketeering. But how? So that's the one thing people should be asking questions on, that particular indictment. But in his indictment and the crimes they're alleging that he did, and the cases and the lawsuits that are involved with P. Diddy, not enough people are asking questions about that. They're fixated on Jeffrey Epstein, who's been dead since 2019. And although there are many people involved or may have been involved in that, I don't know if there's any evidence concrete enough to back up these claims that you've been hearing for years, which is basic speculation. Where right now we have one that's much more important, that's active, and probably involves many people that are famous or in politics today. That would be more troubling, because this is active right now. This case is going to be going forward sometime, I believe, this year or next year. So people should be focused and asking questions about P. Diddy, who's the active, basically took over the role of what a Jeffrey Epstein would be. I think that's more important. I think people are fixated on the wrong thing. The only thing I would say about Jeffrey Epstein is that they should be demanding to see the videos and those discs that they took out of his property. No one has ever seen those. Nobody knows what's on there. And I think that's basically what's left. As far as the files, I think they've given what they can. I don't think there's much more than flight logs and things like that. I think everything should be on those tapes or DVDs that they pulled out.
Well, and this is an ongoing situation, and it is interesting how some people seem to get a pass. You know, Sal, we're going to go to a break in a second here, but before we do that, I do want to, before I just give you a chance, we have a screenshot here from your wonderful YouTube channel where you do the Sal Greco Show. It's a fantastic show where you talk about the NYPD. I know you have a cavalcade of guests you bring on the program. Tell us a little bit about that show and where you can find it before we go to a break here, and we'll have you back on the other side of the break as well.
Sure. So if you go on the Finest Unfiltered YouTube channel, you'll catch my new episodes there. Any previous episodes and any segment parts are on the Sal Greco Show YouTube channel, and also on the Sal Greco Show Rumble channel. Finest Unfiltered YouTube and Finest Unfiltered Rumble has the new versions of the show, or the latest episodes. So you'll go on there, you go on the live section on YouTube, and also in the video section, and also on Rumble. But it's kind of confusing because there's prior episodes on the Sal Greco Show channel, and the newer episodes are on the Finest Unfiltered YouTube channel, where you'll catch all the latest on the Sal Greco Show.
Finest Unfiltered, you heard it here, folks. Go ahead and check it out. I can say I've locked Sal. I get your text and I look at the programs you send me, and it's always a really good show. So folks, don't miss that. When we come back, Sal, you were on the forefront of exposing Consafrito, the hangout of Mayor Adams and Jimmy Rodriguez and so many other people. That was really, I think, the tip of the iceberg here that broke the camel's back. This is the piece of information that made people really start looking at the criminal connections of Eric Adams. We're going to get into that and much more when we come back from these commercial words. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Slingshot TV. I'm your host, Troy Smith. We are here with former NYPD officer Sal Greco, the host of the Sal Greco Show, which you can find on YouTube under Finest Unfiltered. He's joined us today to break down the epic corruption of New York City Mayor Adams, who many conservative influencers would have you believe is being subjected to a kind of witch hunt from the former Biden administration. But Sal Greco's reporting tells us that that is unequivocally false. And not only that, but that Eric Adams also has a troubling history of corruption and burning not only the people of the New York City, but also the people of the United States. So, Sal, this all started for me with you on the Stone Zone talking about Consafrito, a restaurant in New York City that had been doing some illegal things and had become a popular hangout for both criminals and elected officials and celebrities alike. You were on the forefront of exposing this outfit that has now been closed down, a victory for Sal Greco. I want you to break this down for me. Why was this such an important piece of exposing Eric Adams' corruption?
So we got to go back to this place. So we're going to go with the person that was managing this place was a guy by the name of Jimmy Rodriguez. He's a self-admitted criminal and a mob associate. His history is that he owned another place known as Jimmy's Bronx Cafe. And when he owned that place, okay, he had many people that went there. Fidel Castro was there. He's good friends with the Clintons. All the elected officials at that time that were Democrats went there. He's like almost like a Democrat operative where a lot of politicians go there, and music people, Fat Joe, Peter Guns, Eric B. You'll see them there. And I mean, he had a whole issue once with, I think, Cuban Links, another rapper that had an incident at his place. His place was deemed basically too seedy for Major League Baseball players that were banned from going there, okay? There were 14 people indicted out of there from the feds and some kind of drug sting. He himself had his first place, Marisco de Caribe, raided by the feds. He lost properties. He had a car dealership. He's always in and out of trouble. So clearly not someone that you would think the police department would be involved in. But he owned this place. Well, he was a manager, allegedly, on paper, of this place, Con Sofrito. The owner was the gentleman you had in that picture with Eric Adams, just you put up on the screen, was Richard Caban, the brother of the now former NYPD police commissioner, Edward Caban. So the guy that owns the place is a former cop because the liquor license is under his name. What they're not telling you, and I came to discover, was that in late 2021, first of all, when Richard Caban took the place, he took it from this other owner, some Albanian guy, who 2 years later gets picked up by the feds. But we'll get to that in a minute. So when Richard Caban takes over, there was a report in late 2021 from the New York City Police Department. Okay, it was someone that was an officer, and he was writing this to the State Liquor Authority, and it was back and forth, and it was from the Human Trafficking Unit. Okay, the Vice Human Trafficking Unit or something from the NYPD. Okay, so there's reports of human trafficking from the New York City Police Department. We don't know whatever happened with that. The State Liquor Authority was also investigating them. But before Eric Adams even took office, or just as he takes office, all of this stuff disappears. They come to get a liquor license. The State Liquor Authority comes to the Con Sofrito to give them a liquor license in June of 2022. When they come to find out that they have this illegal shed outside, which is basically almost 100 by 500, like it's a big shed, it's a big structure, and they hold all their parties there. And this is where all the magic happens, apparently. There's rooms, there's all kinds of stuff there. So they told them, we're going to give you the liquor license on the same day. The buildings department, remember them? That's the one in the Eric Adams indictment that he was speeding up inspections for. Well, in this case, they did an inspection, and they told them to tear this shed down, which never happened until almost the final days of this place years later. So they were partying in this place that, by the way, was a fire trap. The fire department went there numerous times, issued so many summonses. The Board of Health deemed that place. They got an A rating, even though they had rat droppings and mice droppings in their food. You can literally read it. It's disgusting to read. Somehow, they managed, Troy, to skate everything in the New York City agencies, whether it be the buildings department, the food, the health department, the NYPD, everything you throw at them, they somehow always manage to just party on. The police department's throwing parties there all the time, despite the record of this individual and all these violations that go on in the place, and that they're basically violating court order after court order after court order. So what happens is, after we help expose this, the landlord catches on. They had one final party they shouldn't have had. It was, of all days, January 6th of 2024, where they were having children in the shed and all this stuff. And the landlord said, that's it. They went to the court. They ended up that they found out that they owed a lot of money in back rent, water bills, all kinds of stuff. And they were ordered to shut the place down, which will take the shed down. but they wanted them out of the place. They didn't. They kept fighting this all the way until one of these holiday they had, I believe it was Puerto Rican Heritage Day. They had there, and they were actually having the alcohol in the parking lot after they took the shed down. And then they shut down about a month or two later, and they had the New York City Sheriff, Anthony Miranda, smiling with a beer in his hand next to Jimmy Rodriguez. The same guy that's been shutting down all the cannabis stores, okay? Illegally, may I add. So all of this goes on, and we see the same nefarious characters there. Eric Adams, for one. Eddie Caban, another. Numerous NYPD executives. We also have there, look, that's Ruben Diaz Jr., right on the top of the screen. There's Jimmy Rodriguez to the left. We had Carl Hasty, like I said before, the Assembly Speaker. We've had numerous city council people show up. But the main person that was there is Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State. And what's very troubling with that part, we already now have found out through Sam Antar, at Sam Antar on X, whitecollarfraud.com, he's discovered about her devaluating and then pumping up the numbers of her property. She actually committed the very crime she said that President Trump did with Mar-a-Lago. Okay, and that we now have that as a fact on his website. And Roger, our friend Roger Stone, has pointed this out numerous times on his show on X. But the most troubling part is that she is associating with Jimmy Rodriguez, who's a mob associate and self-admitted criminal. We never have any interference from law enforcement at all at any point with this place. But we do have the report of human trafficking. But you wonder why there was never any law enforcement involved in this place, which shouldn't have a liquor license, shouldn't even be open, should have been shut down. Then we have, the former owner, I forgot to mention, the Albanian guy, was picked up for human trafficking in 2023 or late 2022. He was trafficking humans, I believe, from Canada into another state in the U.S. So that's a little fishy. And we came to find that out in an article on City and State. So why was there no action taken? Why was she always parading around this place, Letitia James, with Jimmy Rodriguez? I believe that's a full-blown investigation. And if not, she should be sanctioned and questioned by the DOJ saying, you are associating with this guy. We have all these things, right? There's a human trafficking report where clearly you, the NYPD, no one's done anything about this. So we don't know what the hell's going on with this place. But you even associating with him, and the fact that he's going untouched, and the owner, which is Richard Caban, shows me that you're doing something wrong. Because if you're not saying that there's something going on there, he's not a witness to anything. No one's been indicted that's been there. So what was she doing? Other than if she has some kind of investment or involvement in what's going on there. I think that's a glaring issue, Troy. No one wants to even talk about it. They keep going over the same low information talking points with everything.
Well, and that is a pattern that we see, Sal, when we're uncovering legitimate fraud and corruption, because those in power want us to avoid talking about that. They don't want us bringing this kind of stuff up. So Letitia James, as I understand, is mounting a campaign really to oppose the Trump administration. At the same time, she shares ties to some of the most dangerous people in New York City, the same people that got Eric Adams indicted. Let me ask you this, Sal. Do you think that there's any special protections being afforded to Letitia James? Why is she being seemingly protected by a justice system that is burned people close to her?
It's a good question. And I could tell you that this whole ring, we call them the Consafrito crew, because there's New York City Police Department personnel involved. There were people that are also scared to come forth with knowledge, to be a whistleblower. And you can understand, if you're a cop and you work underneath these monsters in the NYPD, they could crush your career. No one's going to take you serious because they know a lot of these prosecutors, the heads of the district attorney. Oh, by the way, the Bronx district attorney, Darcel Clark, she was shaking her behind on the dance floor there as well, because she's had multiple fundraisers there. So it's a whole system. And how do you come forward knowing, well, Tish James knows this guy, and this guy has what? Fat Joe there and the terror squad and all the. I mean, just look at the history. It's very, very shady people, to say the least, in this seedy little place that we don't understand what exactly Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, is doing, hanging out here every night, every other night. And there's a lot of allegations, Troy. There's also a straw donor thing that they were saying happened there, because there's parties that they held that were held by the Democrat Party that were not reported there. They have advertisements for parties. There were politicians like Assemblywoman Corrine Reyes. There's no record of her party that was held there, yet there's flyers for it. So you could look into that. You could look into everyone who's been there. Where are the reports of the parties that were held there? Nothing that's disclosed. That's a problem. Kind of like Tish James's financials now, where Sam Mantar has caught on to her overinflating the value of her property. So these are things that are troubling. People want to grasp at straws, but me as a police officer, I was there for 14 years. The road to Letitia James is asking the question, what are you doing hanging around this shady place with this seedy person who all kinds of stuff is going on in this place, in and around this guy, and there's no indictments from New York State involving anyone that's been in this place. Therefore, what is your involvement? And the crime that possibly could have occurred, and that there's a report of something from human trafficking, shows that there's something even bigger that may have happened there. And why was that allowed to happen? And why has no one asked that question to the New York State Police Department? And also Tish James, who's there as the lead law enforcement agent of the state.
Well, and so as we move forward here, Sal, and this continues to unravel, you are describing to me an individual that was at the highest levels in Eric Adams of corruption in Democrat circles, not just in New York, but nationally. We have to remember that New York being one of the biggest Democrat states in the country, this is really an epicenter for the Democrat Party. A lot of their officials come from here, and the core group of Democrats in New York City often become the leaders of the Democrat Party nationally, and that's just a historic fact. So when we're looking at this and then we examine the way that Eric Adams is being protected by some of these conservative influencers, I think for a lot of our audience, it turns the facts on their head, because, here's a guy that we're describing is involved with some of the worst crimes you could imagine. He's associating with some of the worst people you could imagine. And yet there's a lot of people out there that are making excuses for this guy. Now, my question to you is, why this is happening. But before we get that answer, I want to play a clip that I pulled of Eric Adams kind of teasing the idea that he may switch his party affiliation to Republican. Now, to me, this speaks to the idea that all this guy is about, and I think it sums up very clearly in this way. The only way that he doesn't wear an orange jumpsuit is by appealing to the Republican administration and getting his charges dismissed. And it seems that he's successfully doing that, but I think he's lying. I think he's a true blue Democrat, hardened through and through, and I don't think there's anything that can make him move off that. And if the Trump administration truly does, and the Justice Department truly does let him off the hook here, I think he'll be back to preaching sanctuary cities and taking people's guns away and making the streets of New York less safe. He'll be doing that. He's already doing it now, but he'll be doing it even more if they do let him off the hook, because this guy has a history. Let's roll that clip. Think your thoughts. Why is this guy being protected? And this is really just a tease, isn't it?
I'm an American, and I'm going to continue to say that. So no matter what party I'm on or vote on, I'm going to push for the American values.
Then Pix 11 political anchor Dan Manarino pressed Mayor Eric Adams about his current plan to seek another term in office as a Democrat.
That is what I'm proposing to do. I've been a Democrat for many years, and I'm going to run for my re-election as a Democrat. But my focus is the American people and the people of New York City. And those who don't like it, they would cancel me. and I say cancel me. I'm for America.
Adams was immediately slammed by the many other candidates challenging him in next June's Democratic mayoral primary. The latest contender to enter the race is former state assemblyman Michael Blake, who also used to be vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. During the taping of this weekend's edition of Picks on Politics, he said the mayor is pandering to President-elect Donald Trump.
He was a registered Republican under the Rudy Giuliani era. He has now stated that he would be a part of the American Party. The question is, are you a Democrat? Full stop. I am a Democrat. Eric Adams can't say that. And he's making it very clear. Eric Adams cares more about getting a pardon than helping the people.
It's not completely unprecedented for a moderate Democrat to run as a Republican for mayor of New York City. Look no further than Michael Bloomberg. But the highest-ranking current Republican elected leader in New York, Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli, says there's been no formal conversation with Adams about switching party affiliation.
He made a passive comment, and in passing, though, probably admitted what a lot of New Yorkers are thinking, that the Democratic Party has left the majority of New Yorkers behind. Our streets are more dangerous, our cost of living is higher, and our city is not doing as well as it could have been under different leadership.
It just seems like, to me, shameless lying. And what are your thoughts on that, Sal?
Yeah, look, this man is not a Republican or a Democrat. He's a self-impressed individual who surrounds himself with the shadiest people because, I don't know, the guy loves attention, okay? It's very obvious. He'll say and do whatever he has to remain in power and to stay in front of those cameras. He's not a Republican. And in all honesty, I got to be honest, in this instance, he's playing chess and Trump's playing checkers. He's been taken to the House. If you haven't watched what happened on Capitol Hill the other day, they already started using this as a political, say, weapon against Trump, because what's going to happen here is letting this guy off the hook. They're going to just inadvertently throw Trump as the main guy in front of Eric, even though he doesn't know this guy up until a few months ago. But they kind of they're going to use this to their advantage. I saw AOC do it, proving that a broken clock is right twice a day. She did state facts. Eric Adams did not answer her questions. He did not say, she did not ask him a client-attorney privilege information. He couldn't answer it. He said he deference to the judge. Technically, he's in contempt of Congress saying that kind of stuff. I mean, I should know. Wasn't I in front of them? So, you know, it's amazing what's going on here, but this is all to be used as a political weapon against the president. I wish certain people that were in the Justice Department would have thought this out better. I could say, you know, Emo Bove, who's a SDNY guy. He was there before even Comey's daughter. I don't know what he's doing now as a deputy attorney general. He wrote that wrong. If they were going to dismiss this case, which they don't have the merits or the grounds to do so, then he should have said, in fairness of justice, not we're going to dangle this over your head if you don't do a political favor. So it's a quid pro quo. It's unfortunately, you know, it is what it is at this point. It's going to be used politically in the midterms, in my opinion. And it's very unfortunate that it's always people that are working in the Justice Department or Justice Department that try to bring down Trump's presidency. They tried to do this in the first term, and they're trying to do it yet again. And unfortunately, though, in this instance, there's a lot of smoke here. I don't know why any Republican, any conservative influencer would want to attach themselves to Eric Adams. There is nothing good about this man. You would hope where a man who has less than a 20% approval rating in New York City would just step down and resign for the good of New York. But he's too self-impressed to do that.
Well, and Sal, it's important to point out, too, I mean, we've talked a lot about the corruption here, but the everyday people of New York, you know, Eric Adams was elected on this platform of, I'm former law enforcement, I'm going to enforce the law, but what we've seen has pretty much been the exact opposite. No, people are much less safe under Eric Adams's power in New York City than they were even under the last mayor. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, look, he campaigned. He's a law and order guy, but I'm telling you, he was never a cop. Most of us in New York City Police Department will tell you the same thing. I think the guy had 9 or 11 arrests his whole career. I mean, there's people that make, not to say, want to arrest everybody, but he worked in the 80s and in the 90s, and that's the best you could do. That shows that he really is what we call the house mouse, which is an administrative guy who doesn't really do much police work. And it showed in his supervisory skills because he wasn't that good of a supervisor. So it would make sense that he's not a good mayor. And his corruption is deep rooted, and it's unbelievable that any conservative clearly, Troy, I believe, New York City's full of low information voters and people. They only listen to, the hook lines. A lot of propagandists, we'll call them influencer propagandists. They do the same thing. In fact, some of them even post the same thing at the same time, and they're both affiliated influencers. People need to read through all the BS, stop being low information, and get informed. If you don't like what me or Troy is saying, pull up the articles, research the case yourself, and you're going to see that I'm telling everything I'm saying today it's based on facts. I give fact-based analysis. Some people may like it, some people don't, but the truth usually hurts. It's not something pretty, and I think people like to be, almost like romanticized and sensationalized with things that are not true and just fall in that trap. It's a problem, I think, with society more so than we'll say in a political sphere, but it's kind of fallen in that because this guy has a lot of charisma. It's kind of like the World Wrestling Entertainment, right? It's kind of like playing out in politics in the real world. And you have to decipher whether something is real and it's happening, or is it not happening, and you got to look at the facts. People need to read the facts, need to do their own research. It's very imperative. For the sake of the city, New York City, one, the state, New York State, and the country, because we don't want this being a reason for the midterms going wrong for the Republican Party, when really they should have no business getting involved in this Eric Adams case to begin with. Because, Troy, after this case, he's in a couple of others. It really made no sense to get involved because he can't help in immigration either, because he would be violating city laws. If they don't like that, Troy, in New York City, because they're saying that Trump is pulling his strings, which is kind of, it's more like hyperbole. It's not really true. But Eric Adams cannot tell the New York City Police Department to aid ICE in raids because there's a city law involved. It's been there for decades. So a police officer, although if they help, could say, oh, I'm doing the right thing federally, can be charged and terminated from the New York City Police Department for doing that. So, again, this was all a ruse. It was never about immigration. No one tells ICE what to do. They could show up and do what they want in front of a correctional facility or anywhere else because federal law, you're right, does trump city and state law. But the city and state are sovereign and they have their own laws and rules, and they don't have to agree or cooperate with you. And that is how government works, unfortunately. If people don't like it, there's 45 or 46 city council people in New York City that are Democrats. Start voting opposite. That's the best way to describe it.
And we have to get away from the corruption of Eric Adams. I think you're exactly right in laying this out. I think the term low information, talking point, we're talking about these talking points that have been issued out through conservative influencers. It's troubling to me, Sal, because if you read the indictment, just reading the indictment from the Justice Department tells you that this was not a witch hunt. And not only that, but you're exactly right. This started during the first Trump administration. So the idea that President Biden sat back in his chair and said, get Eric Adams because he's standing up to me, it's just a total lie. In fact, we have a picture that I want to put up before we get out of here of Eric Adams at the White House. He met with President Biden. Now, there wasn't any cameras in the meeting, but he traveled to the White House in 2021 to meet with President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland about gun violence and how they could take away people's right to own a firearm in New York even more than they already have. So the idea that this guy was not an ally of Biden or an enemy of him, it's just completely absurd. It's a lie. Yep. And I think you're right. Now that Eric Adams has gotten what he wants, we're going to see him return to exactly the guy he was before. Because in truth, he never changed. He was just lying. And that's really what this comes down to. So, Sal, thank you so much for coming on the show today and laying this all out. You always have an open invitation on here, my friend, to break down what's going on, because I know you were on top of things as far as New York City is concerned. Can you one more time tell people, we have your Twitter handle up there, the Sal Greco. Where else can people find all your great content?
All right, so the Sal Greco Show, remember, there's a channel on YouTube and Rumble. Those play some segments and clips and also the old episodes. But everything, the Sal Greco Show, that's new and going forward up until today, it's on the Finest Unfiltered channel. And that's on YouTube and on Rumble. So you could check that out there. Also streaming on X, on the Finest Unfiltered X account. So you could check me out there, and I do a show. Right now, I believe we're doing them on Tuesdays and Thursdays live, 12:05 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be quite interesting what I'm going to have on, who I'm going to have on as a guest on Thursday. But and in closing, Troy, Eric Adams hasn't even had a security clearance for quite a while, and so haven't his goons underneath him. New York City has been led without security clearance for quite a while. Kathy Hochul's known this as governor and is incompetent and has done nothing. The problem, again, it's a small issue. What's going on, it's a small issue in the grand scheme of things. New York State is a cesspool of corruption, and it can only be saved through some sort of DOJ investigation and low information voters now doing research and flipping a state that is blue, maybe purple, because maybe it's time to get people that will change some of the legislation there and make it make sense.
Absolutely. Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. Sal, thank you so much. Make sure to follow Sal on X. Make sure to check out his show on YouTube. And we appreciate the hell out of him for coming here and laying out that bombshell information. Folks, this is Slingshot TV. I'm your host, Troy Smith. Wherever you're watching, give us a follow. And we will be back tomorrow with another breaking show. We're going to have another guest this week. You guys are going to go crazy for. Massive breaking story. If you haven't had a chance, go to slingshot.news and check out our latest breaking story about the Capitol Police Chief, his lobbying firm, and much else that we're going to get into tomorrow here on Slingshot TV. I'm your host, Troy Smith. God bless you, and good night.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon Howard.
And welcome to the broadcast. On this March 10th, 2025, Washington Worldview Report. Glad you're with us tonight. Neil McCabe joins us. A lot of news to talk about, including X has been up and down and all day long. Elon reveals who is behind massive cyber attack on X. Sounds like it's a country. He sensationally revealed the devastating cyber attack that took down his social media app on Monday seemingly originated in Ukraine. All right, so is he saying that Ukraine's behind it? Apparently he is. You know, I would say the CIA is likely behind it, if I had to guess. If I had to guess, I'd say the CIA is behind it, doing it from Ukraine, because we know the CIA has, what, like 10 military bases there or something? I would say it's probably, I guessed that earlier today. I said, if I had to guess who it was, I'd say it's the CIA. What do you want? You want the business cards? Anybody can get these. Go to worldviewtube.com, get your pack of 20 free business cards and pass them out to your family and friends and tell them all about Worldview Tube. We have sent out thousands of these. Thousands, I tell you. How many last week alone? Like 4,000 alone last week? 7,000 last week alone. Isn't that amazing, Dolly? 7,000. You love these business cards, don't you? I don't know why. But there you go. Get your free pack right here. We'll send you some that Dolly hasn't chewed on, won't we? All right. Great way to promote the network. All right. Promote the network far and wide. All right. Joining me now is our Washington, D.C. correspondent and bureau chief, Neil McCabe. You cannot have those. Hey, Neil.
Hey, Brandon, I just want to say for the record that I fully support the CIA. I have no problems with anything they do, and anything that I might say that could be construed as being against the CIA was just completely misinterpreted, and I unreservedly apologize for any offense.
So do you work for them or are you scared of them? Which one?
I just think they're fantastic guys.
Okay, well, I'm just giving you my opinion. I didn't say they were good or bad, Rolligo. I just said if I had to guess, I would say.
And I think everyone understands that was your opinion and not mine.
That's right. Okay, can you believe this, Caleb? So if I go missing, I guess you'll know who it is now, right? All right, there you go. I got a very disobedient 10-month-old lab over here. Very disobedient. She's turned this into a game, Neil.
Well,
there you go.
What do you rub them with beef or something? What's going on?
I don't know. No, that's the thing. Exactly. It's like, why is she so intrigued by these? You would think I had. You got that right. All right. So what do you make of the attack? I mean, he says it's coming from Ukraine.
Well, there's a lot of silliness dealing with Ukraine right now. The Ukrainians were saying that Elon Musk was anti-Ukrainian, and then Musk is saying, "Why are you telling me this? Your whole internet system, your whole battlefield communications, your command and control between your headquarters and all your field units, it's all being provided by me at no charge. And so, why are you going after me? I'm like your friend. You're lashing out at me, but I'm your friend, and I've done you a great job, a great service. And if I was to shut off my Starlink, you'd be out of business. And so, once again, things are getting murky. It's a maybe like the end of every relationship. There's some unwinding that has to go on. Where people just sort of say things without filters anymore.
Yeah, I love that backdrop, by the way. That's one of my favorites, just so you know.
Oh, it's one of my favorites, too. It's a great place.
It is. It's a great shot. Okay, the Dow falls.
It's always, I'll tell you, when you go to D.C., there's always, as soon as it gets warmer, there'll always be ice cream trucks there.
Whoa, now you're talking.
Yeah.
What's your favorite ice cream, by the way, Neil?
Peppermint stick, probably.
Really? I would not have expected that. Huh. Okay. I like Rocky Road.
Nice.
Rocky Road. And I do like. I also like Klondike bars. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and I don't trust anyone who can't finish their ice cream. That just. Who are these people?
Caleb Nicole said he agreed. He says he absolutely agrees with that statement.
Who are these people who order ice cream? It's like, it's enough. I'll only eat half. I was like, what are you, nuts?
Well, you got a hearty agreement from Caleb. All right, the Dow Jones falls 1,000 points today, Neil.
Well, do you have my notes there? Because I had some analysis of this. First of all, I want to tell people that there are rational forces and irrational or emotional forces involved in any market, and the stock market is like any other. And so your emotional actors buying and selling are wrong, and your rational actors buying and selling are correct. The most emotional session of the week is always on Monday, and the most rational is on Friday. And so what you have is, so Monday morning is maximum emotional irrationality. Friday afternoon is really, the most rational of the markets. So having said all that, we're told that this was a sell-off because of tariffs. But if you look at the stocks that actually were the biggest losers of the day, it absolutely doesn't make sense. And I think the top one is Tesla. Tesla has factories in Nevada, in California, and Texas. 100% of the cars Tesla sells in the United States are made in the United States. They're the only automaker who can say that, and they are completely immune to tariffs. If anything, tariffs help them. And so again, there's another company, Vicor. Vicor makes electrical transmission gears, and it helps electric companies sort of move electricity back and forth with transformers and other things like that. It was down, I'm not sure what the number is today. Maybe it's in my notes. Maybe it's down, 18% today. But, this is
18%, exactly. 100%. 18%. Good memory.
So this is a company that is doing like electricity in the U.S. and we're told that's something that's growing, that's booming because of AI, and the economy is relying more and more on electricity. We're building out our electrical grid. This is part of it. There was a day in February, I think it was February 21st, where it was up 25%. And so, today it's down 18. It's like, whatever. It's Reddit is a social media company, but Reddit is down, I think, its peak from February sometime, like a month ago, was 226. Now it's trading at 107, right? There's insider selling. And in their latest, offering communication to investors and analysts, they're saying our losses are getting bigger, not smaller. Right, so they recently went public in the last year. Part of the reason why you go public is to raise capital and to sort of be able to build out. You basically have all these plans, but you need money to do it. You go public, you sell some shares, you raise some money, but what ends up happening is the plan isn't working yet, and so people are out. There's another company calls itself Strategy now, but in a lot of places it's called MicroStrategy because they haven't. I think the sticker symbol still is like MSTG or something. But this is a company that has turned itself into sort of a holding company for Bitcoin and other cryptos. And so they loaded up on Bitcoin pretty heavily. I think if you go back 6 months, their average price that they bought Bitcoin at was roughly 95,000. Right now, Bitcoin is trading at 80,000. So, they're underwater on those acquisitions by $15 a share. And we're talking about billions of dollars. And so, I think MicroStrategies is taking a hit because they made a short-term trading mistake, just like a lot of companies, a lot of banks, like Goldman Sachs or other places will make a bet on corn and they'll make a bet on oil. They made a bet on Bitcoin. That Bitcoin bet has not turned around positive yet. It doesn't mean the game is over. But I think the stock is being punished for that. I think there's a lot of things in play. I think that overall, none of these big losers have any connection to tariffs whatsoever. If anything, there were 150-something companies in the S&P 500 that hit all-time highs today. There's a lot of companies that are going to benefit from these tariffs. So some of what happened today is just sort of a rollover. We're moving out of the sort of Biden economy and we're moving into the Trump economy, and everybody just decided to do it at once. And I think the other thing is that this is obviously some kind of frenzy that was stoked by the media. I'd compare it to the stock market crash in London when Liz Truss succeeded Boris Johnson as prime minister. And basically the powers that be in England crashed the stock market for a few days to the extent that she had to resign as prime minister. I think she was prime minister for 2 weeks. The only reason she didn't leave immediately after the stock market crash is that Queen Elizabeth was in her last illness, and they decided to let her stay on as prime minister so that, you wouldn't have a prime minister leadership fight right in the middle of funerals and everything else. So basically, we're going to let you wait until the Queen dies. And so that's the only reason she lasted 2 weeks. But they deliberately smashed the markets, and people admitted, the big, powerful people in England admitted that they smashed the markets because they wanted to get Liz Truss out. Her big sin was that she spoke to the people. She represented the people. She was probably as close to MAGA as you would get in the Conservative Party, because remember, Nigel Farage has his own party, Reform, and it's Margaret Thatcher and the great Conservative Prime Minister of England. She used to talk about the wets, and the wets were what we would call the rhinos here in America. And so, like, The Wets have basically taken over the Conservative Party in England. They don't want any real conservatives, and so they dump the markets to get rid of Liz Truss. Trump is not going to go anywhere. Trump is going to ride it out. They asked Trump about if there's going to be a recession over the weekend. He's like, well, there could be, but we're trying to fix this economy. Scott Bessent, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, he has said we have to wean the economy off of all of this crazy spending that Biden did. Biden was spending, he had, I think for 4 years, his average annual deficit was $1.5 to $2 trillion. And so you have there's $8 to $10 trillion of debt that's been dumped on the economy. It's not from any
police really
productive
releasing
use.
few details.
Wow.
So I think that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I wanted to wait till you're done.
Well, yeah, I thought it was important to sort of go more deeper into it because it's such a big story and people have to understand some of the dynamics in play. And when they talk about a crash, okay, well, let's look at the crash. So if Tesla's down 15% and you're telling me that this is a crash to do with tariffs and Tesla is completely immune to tariffs, then this is not a tariff crash or sell-off. Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning, you're going to see a huge rally in the stock market. I'm not sure it'll make up everything that was lost today. It was 1,000 in the Dow, 2.7 in the S&P. Maybe it won't make it all up, but the money will come in tomorrow morning, and it'll be a huge rally. And of course, President Donald J. Trump is speaking to the Business Roundtable, which is sort of that collective of business leaders based in Washington, D.C. And so when he talks to the roundtable tomorrow, he's going to sort of lay out to say, okay, there's been a lot of bad rumor intelligence about what my plan is. I think I'm pretty direct, but Trump's going to say, this is what's going on. And he's going to take questions. And I think it's going to go very, very well. I remember during the election, there was some kind of forum that was run by Bloomberg, and he took questions from business leaders for like 45 minutes, just like a press conference. He takes all comers. He has intelligent conversations with these business leaders, and they walk away saying, okay, this guy should be president. That's what was happening before the election. I'm sure that's what's going to happen tomorrow at the Business Roundtable.
Let's pray that's the case. Speaking of praying, by the way, I guess we should be praying for the InfoWars family. Did you hear that one of their reporters was murdered last night?
No.
I'm just finding this out myself. Here's the report I have from, Austin, Texas.
Police really releasing few details about what happened overnight, but this is what we do know right now. Police say they actually found the victim here in the parking lot of this apartment complex. EMS ended up taking that man to the hospital where he later died. Right now, police will not say exactly if he was shot or stabbed, only saying that he had obvious trauma. Homicide detectives still on scene, as I mentioned this morning, collecting evidence. We've seen also a lot of activity in a second floor apartment where they've been taking evidence bags out. Right now, police say they do not have any information about a suspect, and they're asking if you know something about that to contact them. You can also remain anonymous using Crime Stoppers.
Okay, now what's being reported, again, I did not know about this. Twitter has been up and down all day, so it's been very hard. Been very hard to collect all the news that we normally would collect because of the fact that Twitter's been up and down so badly today. Here's I guess Alex Jones talking about it. Here we go.
I come to the InfoWars family of viewers and listeners into the world with some really horrible news. There are a lot of really cool people that have worked at InfoWars over the years, and one of the most amazing people was Jamie White. You know him as a great reporter and researcher. He was up here last night working late during the Sunday show and after it. And we even have his last post on X where he responded to Elon Musk. Jamie was murdered last night outside of his home, just a few miles away from our studios. And we are the folks here breaking that news first because his family has been notified, and his good personal friends here that were very close to Jamie have talked to his folks and family. We sent some people over this morning when he didn't answer the phone, because he's always here early, loves to work, loves to fight tyranny, loves to promote freedom. And when they got to the apartment complex, there was yellow tape everywhere and blood all over the parking lot. And we went and talked to the manager. They didn't know anything. It's like everybody else we see in the left. They just very laissez-faire. But our crew member saw a police officer and went and talked to them. And they made a phone call. And she had the details when she talked to him and knew Jamie. The police officer said, yes, he died at the hospital very soon after they got him there. The police responded within 2 minutes, and they had him at the hospital where he was pronounced dead within 18 minutes.
Pray for that family. And wow, that's shocking. I don't, obviously they're not giving any information as to whether it was targeted or random. I don't know.
No, it's a terrible thing. It's a, in the attacks on conservatives, of course, are ramping up, and we saw the attacks on Tesla trucks and the firebombing, and there's an escalation. I think everyone in the conservative movement or MAGA movement understands that 15 years ago the left was trying to get us fired. 5 years ago they were trying to put us in jail, and I think in a lot of ways now they want us dead. So I don't know what happened. I'm just speaking in general. It could be something completely unrelated to work, but I didn't know Jamie, but I've interacted with Alex Jones. He's an incredible gentleman with an incredible passion for journalism and the truth. And I do have some friends over there that who are just absolutely remarkable, dedicated, and passionate journalists. And this kind of news is just absolutely brutal and terrible. And
here's the latest. Here's KXAN, another report.
I'm Sally Hernandez. Police on the scene in East Austin at Douglas Street and Old Torf Street. A 911 call came in just before midnight last night. Bear Tryon has been there for us within the last few hours to figure out exactly what police are saying from that investigation. Good morning.
Police really releasing few details about what happened overnight.
All right, I think that's the same report we just saw. So apparently it is being investigated as a homicide. Again, let's pray, it's a horrific, whatever the reason, but let's just pray that this isn't the beginning of hunting down conservative reporters and researchers and people, right?
Well, yeah, and it's I would hate to think that someone was laying in wait for him, knowing his hours, and and obviously guys at InfoWars put out a lot of very aggressive journalism that in journalism, right? We're taught when we go to the schoolhouse, we're taught to avoid contaminating relationships and to be very careful about how you report on things, and because you're going to upset some people and you don't want any kind of conflict of interest or anything like that. And I think at InfoWars, they're very aggressive about reporting the news regardless of who it upsets, and that's why they have such they have tens of millions of people who watch them every day. The amazing traffic, amazing viewership, because of their hard-hitting journalism. But in the world we live in today, that comes with some risk.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does.
Terrible thing for his family and everyone over there at InfoWars. There's great guys. They're just for a place that has such a sort of aggressive reputation. I haven't met anybody there that has a mean bone in their body. They're just great guys over there.
All right, let's transition, as hard as that is, to Zelensky and Trump. What's the latest on that relationship and the negotiations, Neil?
Well, Trump has said that, he wants Zelensky out. It's an interesting dynamic with Trump that when a deal breaks up and when somebody leaves the table, what he has said, I'm not sure if it's an art of the deal or something else, but it basically says, Trump, when a deal falls apart and someone walks away, the deal is not dead. But that just means they're going to take it has to be a bigger deal. And so before they were talking about mineral rights, now they're talking about democratic reforms. People may not be aware that Zelensky's term in office expired like a year ago. And they basically suspended the presidential election because of the war. And the Constitution that our good friends at the CIA wrote for the Ukrainian government allows them to suspend elections if there's a war, which is something the United States hasn't done. And so that's why it may seem peculiar to Americans that you would suspend your presidential election during a war. A lot of people would think if you're in a war, that's exactly when you want a presidential election, right? So having said that, Trump has said that Zelensky has to commit that he is going to step aside and he's going to allow new elections and let's reboot this democracy. I happen to know that members of the Ukrainian opposition are already meeting at sort of the staff level with people in the White House, and they're just sort of trying to figure out now, what does a future Ukraine look like democracy-wise, and how does it relate to the United States? As for the aid, people have said, hey, if the talks go well in Saudi Arabia, maybe the United States will, restart the aid. The aid has stopped. Not just the physical aid, like new shells and bullets and Band-Aids and pillows, but also the intelligence sharing. There is a major logistics hub that the United States military created basically from scratch in Poland, and that has been completely shut down. And so they picked up all their gear, all the soldiers, everybody, they just packed up and left. It is now a vacant field, right? There's just nothing there anymore. So that logistics operation going into Ukraine has been shut down. And so, people are saying, hey, the Biden administration loaded things up. They sent as much stuff. There are people saying, hey, Ukraine doesn't need Trump. They have enough to last for 6 months without any new shipments. The Europeans have said, hey, we don't need the United States. We'll do it ourselves. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, he's going around saying, hey, UK troops will go to Ukraine to be peacekeepers, to give those security guarantees. And he's going around to all of his fancy buddies in Europe saying, hey, how many troops do you want to send to Ukraine? And they're like going, none? How about 0? Why don't you enjoy Ukraine and tell us about it? Send us a postcard. So we'll see how it goes. Those negotiations in Saudi Arabia, which begin this week, another interesting dynamic is that Zelensky will go to Saudi Arabia, meet with the Saudis, but he'll leave before the Americans show up. And this, I think, is sort of, this kind of like one-upmanship. I'm a president. I'm the head of state. Rubio and these guys are staffers. Why am I talking to staffers? We'll let staffers talk to staffers. I'm a president. I'm not going to hang around for that. And so that does not ingratiate himself with the team. And we'll see. Zelensky has said, I will sign the mineral deal. And I'm very sorry for what happened the other day in the White House, that terrible misunderstanding. Okay, sign the deal. Sign it. What? I don't understand. I don't understand what is like. I mean, that day at the White House, right? They had the surf and turf lined up, right? They had all the tables and chairs, right? They were already lighting the candles. They were pouring the champagne, right? It was, it was like the locker room for the '86 Red Sox, waiting to be declared the winners of the World Series. And then they took away all the champagne, and so. The deal is done. I don't understand. If you said you're going to sign it, sign it. I think that, yeah. And so Zelensky is sort of playing this ropey-dope. Zelensky wants the U.S. security guarantee, and he wants U.S. troops as a tripwire so that when the Russians roll in, if they kill Americans, then the American people will be so angry at the Russians that they will go to war with Russia. What the Ukrainians want is a war against Russia, just like the Lithuanians and the Latvians and the Estonians. They want a war with Russia, and they are thrilled for the opportunity that the United States would do that war for them. Interestingly, I don't think the Poles, which have certainly had centuries of issues with the Russians, the Poles really have no interest in going to war with the Russians. I think, the Hungarians, the Romanians, other people, they're like saying, hey, we're not so keen on this war. And so we'll see how it plays out. I think that people have to accept that what was going on under Biden isn't going on anymore. I just don't think they understand that there's a new president. And Zelensky, it's a guy, George Washington, Churchill, Mick Jagger, it's all the comparisons, right?
Did you just throw Mick Jagger in there?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, what has the guy done? So, it's not like he's winning the war.
Right.
I've said this before. It's what I say all the time. And so I'll just repeat myself because it's in the end, I just end up repeating myself anyway. But, both Hitler and Napoleon said the same thing, which is, I can't believe how lousy this Russian army is. This was so easy. I think in the first month of Hitler's invasion of Russia, I think they captured 8 million Russian prisoners of war, right? Like, they took millions of square miles of Russian territory. And, what could be easier than invading Russia? It's, piece of cake, and then, just like Napoleon. And then he looked out the window and he saw that the Russians had set fire to Moscow and he was in Moscow. And he's like, well, where's the fire department? Oh, we ain't got one. So
Yep.
There you go.
There you go. And look at this. President Trump put this out today on his account. Look at that. They're getting rid of Black Lives Matter Square or Avenue or whatever in D.C. Like, bye-bye.
Right. And I think that there's a lot more intervention now with the Trump years. If you want to really compare Trump with Reagan, the Reagan administration didn't get into the weeds the way the Trump administration does, whether it's the economy or politics. It's much more aggressive and much more hands-on in getting things done. And I think that's what people want.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely. So President Trump has put that out there. Black Lives Matter Plaza being destroyed in D.C. Well, maybe tomorrow night we get to the continuing resolution. How about that? Tomorrow night?
The fastest 30 minutes in television.
It does go awfully fast. Indeed, it does. Neil McCabe, you can find him on all social media platforms at Reporter McCabe, our D.C. correspondent and bureau chief. Thank you, Neil. Thank you for watching, folks, and telling your family and friends about the broadcast. Take care.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com. We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a Solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
All right, welcome to Code Blue, Dr. John and Brooke. It is March the 10th, 2025. And so today we're going to continue to talk about what's in the headlines, and that's the measles outbreak. And, I believe that, we have measles outbreak every year. Of course, we need to kind of figure out why we're having these outbreaks. We know that vaccinating during a outbreak can cause further measles cases. For example, if you vaccinate a child that is immunocompromised or on steroids, etc., then they could shed and infect others. So this is one thing we need to get a kind of a hold on. But of course the drive-by media is raising tremendous alarms, and this is a massive propaganda campaign against Robert Kennedy Jr. And so we're going to watch here, if you can get this up for us, Caleb, MSN and an interview they just did with talking about measles. Can you bring that up for us?
The Trump administration's approach to health care is setting off alarm bells. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will expand research into the repeatedly debunked link between autism and vaccines. Remember, the CDC is under the umbrella of the Department of Health and Human Services that is now led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy rose to prominence as an anti-vaccine crusader and has claimed without evidence that childhood immunizations are linked to autism. Meanwhile, there are now measles cases in at least 13 states, including Maryland, where a case was just confirmed in a resident who returned from international travel through Dulles International Airport earlier this week. The disease has already killed 2 people, including a 6-year-old child in Texas. These mark the first deaths from measles in the United States in a decade. Both were unvaccinated. It's important to note that according to the CDC, the vaccine to prevent measles is 97% effective. Instead of urging Americans to get vaccinated, the Secretary of Health and Human Services wrote in an op-ed for Fox News, quote, "The decision to vaccinate is a personal one." Not only that, Secretary Kennedy is also pushing vitamins, cod liver oil, and steroids as a method of prevention and treatment.
Right now, we have we're delivering vitamin A. We are providing assistance if people need ambulance rides, and they're getting very, very good results. They report from budesonide, which is a steroid. It's a 30-year-old steroid. And clarithromycin, and also cod liver oil, which has high concentrations of vitamin A and vitamin D.
Joining me now, Dr. Ashish Jha, Dean of the Brown University School of Public Health and a former White House COVID-19 response coordinator. Dr. Jha, great to see you again. Thanks for coming back to the Sunday show. Just please, doctor, your reaction to listening to the Secretary of Health and Human Services push cod liver oil, vitamin A, and other things as a treatment for measles.
Yeah, first of all, Jonathan, thanks for having me back. It's deeply disappointing, and let's just get right to what's happening here. I mean, cod liver oil was the standard of care for measles in the 1930s, 100 years ago, before we had vaccines. That is not the standard of care today. Now, vitamin A is an important thing, particularly in Africa or in other places where there's widespread deficiency. We use it, but it is not a real treatment for somebody who's otherwise healthy and has gotten measles. Jonathan, you and I both know there's only one way to prevent measles, and that is to get the vaccine. And if our health secretary should be talking every single day about the importance of vaccinations and making sure that everybody who's eligible gets a vaccine. Instead of that, he's distracting us with budesonide and cod liver oil and other things that really are not going to make a difference in preventing illness and saving lives.
How concerned are you? I think I just reported there have been 13 states have cases of measles. Are we looking at a runaway case of measles across the country, or do we still have the systems in place to slow it down or to keep it under control?
Well, it's going to vary from community to community. The reason we've seen such a massive outbreak in Texas is because in those communities, vaccine rates are very low. Let's be clear. This is the most contagious virus known to man, measles. And once immunity levels, vaccination levels fall below 95%, the virus is able to spread. You have communities with 80, 85% vaccination rates. They are very susceptible. If you have a community where, let's say, the vaccination rate is 95 or 98%, one case that comes in from the outside is not going to spread in any meaningful way. So I'm worried about places that have low vaccination rates. Obviously, Texas is one of them, Idaho, Alaska. There are many places in the country where we have seen very low vaccination rates. They might see very large outbreaks, and we've got to get on top of it because you're going to see a lot of kids and some adults getting very sick.
And what is the treatment for someone who's not vaccinated, who gets measles? Is the treatment easy, relatively fast, or is it not?
Look, there is no known treatment. We give vitamin A on the outside chance that they have vitamin A deficiency, but that's not going to help you if you don't have vitamin A deficiency. It's largely supportive care. A majority of people do okay, but we know in kids, 1 to 3 out of every 1,000 will go on to develop encephalitis. That is an inflammation of the brain. That is a very bad thing to have. About 1 in 1,000 kids end up dying from measles. There are other long-term effects of getting measles. It wipes out your immunity in a way that can be quite damaging. So there is, what we talk about is supportive care, just trying to get people through that infection. There is no known treatment for measles.
Let me get your thoughts on what I said at the beginning in the intro, that the CDC is planning to do a study on vaccines and autism, something that has been debunked many, many times. Why this obsession to find a link between the two?
Yeah, as you said, Jonathan, this has been studied thoroughly. It's been studied to death. And even Jay Bhattacharya, the new NIH director who's going to be coming in, agrees the science here is settled. What they're doing is by keep raising kind of doubts about vaccine safety and even launching this study, which is going to be a huge waste of money, they're going to be able to continue to say, well, we don't really know if there's a link. We're studying it, and continue to foment doubt. So to me, this is not an intellectually honest effort to get to the bottom of a question that has been already settled. I'm unconvinced that these guys are going to be persuaded by whatever this study finds. But for months and years, as this study goes on, they're going to continue to be able to question the safety of vaccines, causing more harm, more illness, and unfortunately more deaths for America's children.
Okay, so what's your take on that, Brooke?
Well, what I see is a combination of things. First off, they come with false ideas saying that if you take a vaccine for measles, then you won't get measles, and that's just not been true. Another thing that they say is everyone has to be vaccinated for the vaccine to work. This is the same lie they tried to tell people for COVID, and it just is simply not true. If a person wants to take a vaccine, they can protect themselves personally. And if someone doesn't want to take the vaccine, maybe they get measles and then they get better and they have acquired natural immunity and a stronger immune system for it. Another false pretense is that there is no link between the MMR vaccine and autism. And, they can continue to say this as many times as they want to say it, but they simply are not looking at the facts. They're not talking to the parents that have injured children, and they're not trying to take care of these children that have all these special needs. It's been absolutely devastating for these parents. It's a life-altering thing. I cannot imagine the burden, the what has been robbed from these children of a healthy life because of fear mongering and pushing vaccines that are unnecessary. I personally had the measles. I think I had the mumps. It's something you get and you get over. And, are there deaths? I'm sure what we have learned from COVID is that they can drum up deaths from anything. They can take the sickest child that has passed away and label them a measles victim. So I have a very, very hard time finding any truth in anything they say.
Yeah. And I think that's the general consensus of most people out there that have lost trust in the medical community and doctors is that, this is MSN, and they're going out there and, you heard it. It was very derogatory towards Kennedy. And really, their whole point, and, I don't know if really this measles outbreak is anything unusual. It's like I said, every year we have measles outbreak throughout the country, and they're probably just. It's very likely that this has been just propagated and really promoted, such that at a time when Kennedy has said repeatedly he just wants to go look at the vaccine schedule, the childhood vaccines, and see if that could be a cause of autism. And we know that 1 in 36 people have children or have autism at this point. Okay, back when we were kids, it was more like 1 in 10,000, and so we just want to know why. And like Brooke said, we believe that there's plenty of evidence to show that the MMR vaccine did cause autism, and and there was a direct link because there was high levels of mercury, and the CDC is and these folks have confirmed this, but yet they say these measures have been corrected, and so therefore there's no problems at this time. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk more about some of the things that's occurring as well, with the bird flu, and also in the Wuhan lab, there's another coronavirus variant that has come out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So stay with us, and we'll be back right after this break.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
All right, welcome back to Code Blue with Dr. John and Brooke. So we were left there, and we were talking about the measles and how this was really a propaganda push to show that really pushing for everyone to get vaccinated with the measles vaccine. And this is a time when Kennedy has repeatedly talked about, and Trump as well, they want to do an investigations on what's causing autism. And we certainly know that the measles vaccine in the past, when there was high levels of mercury there, and it's that may have been corrected, but at one time the CDC they know that it caused autism, and so but they're trying to come back and say that there's never been a link between childhood vaccines and MMR and autism. And so with that, Brooke, you want to just add a little bit more commentary there on your thoughts as a layperson?
Yes, as a layperson, non-medical, I've just recently learned about a condition that is a pretty common condition for a lot of people, that if they have this condition, they may be at a higher risk to have problems with certain vaccines. That's the MTHFR condition. I'm as old as I am, and I'm just recently learning about this. And if this is known and this is understood, why don't they simply test for this particular condition prior to giving any vaccines? That might be one thing that they could do to elicit a little bit of trust, is to, say, okay, we understand this and we're going to test for this. Another big thing another big issue that I have is when they start testing and they're self-testing, so they're not even getting outside sources to review their data, but when they self-test, they'll get a child that's had 50 vaccines and add one more vaccine and see if they do any worse than the one that had 50. Is 51 any different than 50? Well, no. The only way that it would really work is if you had an unvaccinated child tested against a vaccinated child. And when this testing was actually done, and when this data was done, it was done by Dr. Paul Thomas. What it showed was astounding, and it turned his head, it turned everyone's head that looked at this data. And when you're looking at an unvaccinated child's health versus a fully vaccinated child's health, you have a world of difference. So is it a specific vaccination, or is it the continual onslaught onto a child's immune system from repeated vaccines that's causing not just autism, but a whole host of childhood illnesses that were virtually non-existent 50 years ago?
Yes, correct. So these studies just need to be done. They're not going to be studies that are going to be easily done. I mean, you have to have the right populations. Certainly, you could go out to different groups of people that have not been vaccinated to a large extent. For example, Mennonites, and that is one. Of course, that's been brought up. I read an article earlier that out in Texas, this is supposedly where the outbreak has occurred amongst a Mennonite community. Now, I don't know if I guess there was a 6-year-old that died in Texas. We don't know anything about that child. We don't know what their underlying medical conditions were. We don't know if they received any supportive treatment. And so, with measles, there is no specific treatment. However, supportive care early, if it is what's needed sometimes. I mean, most children that get measles, it's very self-limiting. It's a virus that causes a rash, but many times it's not. It's just not a very, very severe illness, but it can turn into something more severe. But that's when supportive care early, whether it be steroids, breathing treatments, etc., are appropriate. And so we just don't know anything about this 6-year-old child. We'd like to know more. And then also, I guess there's been another person reported another death. And once again, we don't know about these people. This is, just to say that, because these people have died we need to get vaccinated, et cetera, period, in the story is really fear-mongering. And so with that, now there's another thing that's come up, and that's there's another variant that has come out of the Wuhan lab, coronavirus variant. And so we saw that